Shout out to US Arc and all the US Arc members. If you don't know what US Arc is, do not be ashamed. Simply click on the third link in the description below. Go to usarc.org. See what it's all about. See how you could actually protect your own collection whenever a legislation might hit your backyard. You just never know. Things are changing constantly in the reptile hobby, and it's good to know when things are creeping up in your area. So shout out to Phil Goss, shout out to Vanessa, shout out to Jeremy, shout out to all the US Arc supporters and teammates out there. Cannot wait to see how much we fight this year to keep our animal rights. And if you're not a US Arc member, talk to your fellow keepers and just let them know what US Arc's all about, and they're here to protect our animal rights. Shout out to US Arc and all the US Arc supporters.
T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Well, no Junior this week, but Johnny showed up at least, so that's a positive. Going into it, we've already heard the US Arc thing. Pomona, you just went there. I don't need to start talking about the next one yet, so I think we're going to go ahead and just roll right into it. Oh, Johnny.
What's going on, man?
I want to apologize. I was going to do a different background. Technology's kind of silly, so this was the only skink one I had uploaded, so I have to roll with it.
It looks good. Looks good.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. But so I remember there was some really complicated thing about your name, something about when you changed species, you had to change your name too. What's your name, man?
So like when I first started Instagram, I think it was like 11 years ago or 10 years ago. And when I started, I was working with Racadactylus species, so it was like Johnny Rachs, like RHACS. So like Racadactylus, that's like was my name back then. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tight. Yeah. MJ sent it over, and I was like, "That's not his name." And then he didn't reply for 2 days, so I just rolled with it.
But it gets people thinking, so it's fine,
All right. That's fair. All right. Well, how about this? People on my show might not know you. I know we did that skink thing on a skink episode recently, but man, do I want to hear about you buying or the Ractodactylus stuff first and then transition into what you're doing now, or should we just go right into the skink talk?
We can go right into the skink talk. I'm in.
All right, how about this?
If you want to hear about the geckos, that's fine too.
All right, fuck it. Give us a little bit of the gecko thing, just so we know, and then we're gonna roll into skinks.
Yeah, I mean, way back when I was a kid, I worked with like fish and turtles, and then probably when I was like 12, 13, when like Exoterras first started coming out, I had like crested geckos, and then was in school, went to college, kind of took a break, and then I started, loving the giant geckos, the largest gecko in the world. So I started working with them, and just seeing how unique they were, and then like the color palettes. I just kind of stuck with it and saw a vision and kind of pushed forward, and been doing it for quite some time now, and built. So segue to the skinks is a lot of what I started with the Racadactylus, with like the Kahua, the gargoyles, and the Leachianus. Kind of like a lot of the money that I was making kind of straight went into a lot of the skinks, and I just started, grabbing what I could. And then they went like Southeast 3, and like we couldn't get them anymore. But a lot of like my Shingleback collection, mostly all of it, came from like a mentor of mine named Dave Sutton. He was retiring, and I give him so much credit because he wanted them to go, he wanted to go to somebody that can kind of carry the torch instead of spreading him all over the place. So, and I give him so much credit because he could have just got as much money as he want and just, got top dollar and moved on. And he waited for me to save as much as I can because I was purchasing a house at the time. So I was like, I got so much juggling, and he was very patient with me, and I kind of just, basically paid for the collection. And then, I had a couple of things I got from Europe as well. And then everything was, like it pieced it all like a puzzle and just kind of got everything. And then I even got, from Dave, occipitalis, like the Westerns. And then I got one blotched from him, and I just started buying a bunch of blotched. Actually, I think you might know one of my first blotched blue tongues that had her first litter here. Well, actually, had my first litter here. The female I got was from Jeff Green. Actually, Jeff Green produced that animal.
That's tight.
Yeah, and then I wound up getting that, and she actually had a litter of 3 babies. That was my first litter, and then it just kind of kept going from there, you know. And then Kim Lancey helped me out with a couple. And then probably been like, I want to say like it's been like 8 years. 8 years I've been working with them. 7 or 8 years. Yeah.
Happens fast, man.
Yeah, it really does.
I got
It felt
to
like
go
it was
to
yesterday.
Jeff Green's house, which was awesome because going to his house, you know, his wall unit and how he kept his skinks was always just like the coolest thing in the world to me. Like, always thought, you know, down the line where I had a little more space, I would do something like that. So getting to see it in person was really awesome. And he also had a group of Shinglebacks together when I was there. But no, that was a neat experience. I was heading out to the Pomona show, and it was a pit stop on the way. Brian Barczyk gave me a lot of money, and I had a lot of money, and that's when the red stuff was like,
Yeah.
not a Jeff's place. And I think between me and Brian, we picked up 10 of them. So I got to go hand pick out everything. Like I said, the whole experience was awesome.
Yeah, I know. That was right around the time where like Brian went, like everyone watched when Brian and Snake Bites went to Australia and started showing like everything over there, and we were like, everyone was like, "Oh my god, this is crazy!" And then it just blew up. You know, here we are today. You know, it's just crazy how time flies.
No, 100%. And yeah, no, the Brian thing was funny because, you know, me and him used to text about this and that back in the day. And he goes out there and takes that trip. I was supposed to go on that trip, but I want to say it was like $6,500 to take it. But it was all inclusive, a bunch of zoos. You got to go to Steve Irwin's dad's
Yeah,
place.
I remember
Cool
that.
experience, man. But he got back from it and he started talking about Skinks because he got to see Joe Ball. And I was like, these things are awesome. And I started sending the pictures of the ones I had. He bought like all my babies out for like 2 consecutive years. And him talking about it really blew the whole market up. Some bigger breeders started believing in them, went out and started buying them by like the 10 lot, 20 lot. It was interesting times, man. I had a blast.
Yeah, that's a testament to like how I feel about the hobby in general. It's like, you know, I always in my head, I don't believe in competition, and I believe in unity. It sounds crazy, but I believe that, you know, if this breeder, you know, a good breeder talks good about something, I think it helps us all, in my opinion, because, you know, in the end, somebody's going to want something from that breeder. And usually I've noticed over the years, they usually get what they want from them, and then they want something from somebody else. And the more we advertise, I think it's so important. That's what Brian did is, you know, like, you know, a lot of people can sit there and hate on him and feel like, no, who's this guy? But, you know, Brian did something that was so important, and that's advertising, you know, these species, and everyone wants to kind of come in and be a part of it. And I think, you know, that's a big thing. It's like, I try to be, and it's hard, but, you know, you got to root for everybody because they all play a role in a sense in advertising, you know. And that's what I like is like, you know, you're showing off animals, you know, and I have them too. It helps everyone, you know. And that's like, I think something like that Brian did with the Skinks, you know.
No, 100%. And, you know, I'm kind of, you know, I'm exactly like you. I don't really look at the competition thing. You know, if I'm at a show and someone's at my table and I don't have the right animal, I'll tell them where to go, who has the right animal for them. Like, you know, the sales always come. Like, my competition to other people might be I just want to make a prettier animal sometimes.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where you like one of those things you're like, like for me, it's like, I want to look at myself in the mirror. I don't want to say, oh, like if someone's doing, you know, getting something spectacular, well, maybe it's something that I need to work on myself a little bit more. And even like, for instance, I think what's important now is, I think we talked about this on the last podcast, how important it is, you know, like getting some new people involved, you know, because in the end, you know, some of those really expensive animals, a lot of these bigger breeders are, you know, using it for advancement pieces, you know, like that's their investment for the future. But right now we're in this stagnancy where these breeders are just in the moment of surviving. I think it's important that we get some of these new guys in so that everyone's kind of, you know, these newer people are buying from other breeders and then they feel kind of safer to want to buy those advancement pieces. And I think that's coming soon. And that's why I always second guess myself, or like not second guess myself. I always felt a little weird with the auction, but I noticed that like how important it is that it is about the new breeder that's coming in, and sometimes you got to accept or expect that some of those animals are going to go for a lower price. But what happens is you got to realize what the long term brings. So that's why I love that sometimes that auction does help with that, where you have some of these new breeders that don't have a lot of money, but it's their start. It's a starting point, and most of the time they're going to come back to you. And I that's why I like starting to understand now that live auction, that auction definitely plays a big role with some of these new keepers, and for the future of that buyer.
Yeah, we me and Alex talked to David. I can't remember his last name. I'm talking about in the Chicago area. And, we kind of brought up the idea of Palm Street or even Morph Market auctions for like blue tongue skinks. Every year I hope I'm going to have an amazing year. And, last couple years, no excuses. I haven't had my best years. But this year, I'll be honest, I'm full swing. I'm on the tail end of breeding. I could produce a lot of animals. I think I put 50 skinks into the market this past year. I hope to do 100 to 200 this year. I don't know if it's going to be individual sales at shows or if I should try a couple auction settings, but I just don't know what the draw is going to be, like who's going to be the audience, who I should invite to maybe get some of their followers there. Tiki, those guys would probably kill it. They got a good following. Yeah. Me, I don't know who's going to be there. And not that I don't mind that the animals, if they go for a little less, because going into it, I understand that. But I want a little more control over my audience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, I don't know, don't short yourself, because I'm a fan of you, and I really believe there's probably a lot of people that are fans of you too. So you never know, man. And go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, you're my demographic, dude. Like, dudes in their 30s. Usually they don't own houses, though, so this is a little different. But, yeah, you're my demographic.
I mean, too, like, I mean, you do a lot of shows too, right? Don't you do pretty well with them there?
Yeah, I go pretty heavy with the shows up until about May, and then I don't do any shows until like October, Tinley. I like to take the summers off. I find they're a bit slower. It's a lot of stress on me and the animals, but I used to be like 30 shows a year. Now I'm like 10, maybe 15 shows a year. Still a lot.
Yeah, that's better for you, man. You don't want to overwhelm yourself. It is a lot, Some of those shows can be a lot, I don't know how people do them, man. It's crazy.
No, 100%, man. I mean, I'd love to get it down to where I could just do the big boy shows, like have like a ring of like 6 or 10 to do every year, like get to Pomona a couple times, Tinley. But man, I always say I love these small shows I go to. They're diamonds in the rough. People don't understand like big fish in a little pond mentality when I'm in there. I like a little show. Like I sold. Well, yeah, go ahead.
No, you're bringing, and that's the thing is like a lot of these shows like Tinley and stuff. They're like people that are fully understanding of what it is in the hobby, whereas those little places are the people that are just kind of coming in and saying, "Oh, look, there's a show, let's check it out." And then that's where we all start. That's where I started with like White Plains. When I was a kid, like we back then you just had Google and you just typed in reptile shows, and like that was the closest one, and that's where it starts, and then it starts to go from there. So that. Those shows are just as important. Those are the people you get. It's like the rec league of hockey, right? The starting point.
Man. So, like, I've talked about it. I pretty much grew up in Buffalo, New York. That's what got me in the reptile scene, going into a pet store there. But White Plains, like, I went to my local Buffalo show. I got the Cleveland and Columbus knocked out. But I think it was like 2002, 2003. I saved up. It was only like $350, but it made me justify like the 7-hour drive out there.
Yeah.
Man, what a show that was. Like, that was an incredible mix. All these awesome Northeast breeders. Like, I remember like Nerd running around. I remember like Jeremy Stone with like a $15,000 bumblebee in his hand. Like, it was an insane scene back then.
I think even Brian Barczyk went there.
Brian Barczyk
he used to go there too. Yeah. Yeah. You got Vin Russo. He's there. I heard it's not the same. Hopefully, maybe there is some change there, but I think after COVID, things kind of changed.
COVID made it tough. Bruce passed away. Within the last couple of years, that made a big difference. It's tough. I'll be honest. I haven't been to that show in so long, and like, where we talk about me loving shows, I found it so hard to vend in the Northeast at Hamburg and White Plains because I always brought 2 tables. I always had anywhere from like 3 to 5 species on my table, sometimes more. I never sold anything. And all the local vendors told me, until you put in a full year and expect bad sales, you need to be a familiar face for people to want to buy from you. But I couldn't justify putting in a year of work to make no money in hopes of future money.
Well, and then you look at it, you got like a platform like Morph Market and, some of the social media platforms we use. And it's like, you don't have to go anywhere. Your animal, you get somebody, that wants to buy on Morph Market or if someone hits you up on Instagram, it's as simple as, okay, get the label and just put it in the box from your house. You don't have to, pack all these animals maybe the night before or early morning. So I mean, to me, it's like, a lot of the shows I like for connection purposes, and I'm sure like a lot of people viewing this and yourself, I like going there to meet people and put faces to Instagrams and Facebooks and go from there, so like that's I mean, which is still great too, and again, vending, I'm not trying to rip on vending. I think it's good too. You get some of these people that are new in the area like that, they want to check it out. So
No, 100%. Like what? I think we met up. It was probably like 2 Tinleys ago, 3 Tinleys ago. I know it was freezing cold outside, but it's always
yeah, it was
cold
outside.
Like I always knew about your collection. I never had a face to the name, if that makes sense. So I appreciate you coming over and introducing yourself. Like I said, you're working with like all the coolest skinks that like nobody can have in the industry, in my opinion. Definitely the hardest to find stuff. Definitely. I thought hard to breed stuff, but like the shingles alone, like you've had a lot of success with the shingles, right?
Yeah. I've had a lot with them. It's I guess it was more of a mental thing. For me, I mean, listen, you got to build connection and you got to like build relationships and kind of get yourself, you know, in a sense, like showing, I guess, building, rapport with people. And, the biggest thing is I just believed in it. And to be honest with you, when I first started, I mean, kids that are watching don't totally do these type of things because, I mean, it's possible, but, when I first started, I believed in it so much that I maxed out floral credit cards to the fullest and was so driven and knew exactly what I wanted. Obviously, I had some luck and good circumstances, but with hard work and vision, those things start to follow. And I believed in it. To me, these animals are not rare where they come from. Like I'm not anybody special. Like I just like I said, I saw the vision and I went after it. My mental mindset was like, dude, you can do this. And yeah, it's weird. Like it sounds like weird, but there's a manifestation. Like there's I see it in my head, and I'm sure a lot of people out there, know what I'm like feeling, but like I see it, and then like I was just like, we're gonna do this, and even right to now, like I see the future of what I want done here, and nothing's gonna stop me. Even again, if I need money, I'll pull loans. I'll do what it takes because I see it. And I think that's really what it was. It's nothing like, yes, I got some cool reptiles and they're really rare, but anybody can really do this. It was more of a mental thing.
No, I get that. I always hear about people that like took out credit cards. I remember even like Sean Bradley back in the day. I heard when he got in the hobby, he maxed out some credit cards. I've never had a credit card because I just don't trust myself and I don't like what I don't have. It's tough, man. If I did, maybe I'd be in a little different place, but my collection's changed so much over the years just by like my means of what was left over from my job financially.
Yeah.
And then doing a couple things on the side. I always talk about it like I did medical studies in Buffalo, New York, where they pay you like $2,500 to take a bunch of pills and take a bunch of your blood. I did one. I had to like stay in there for like 7 days at a time with a catheter in my arm so they could draw blood whenever they wanted. But I got paid
crazy.
Like $2,500, and then I went and bought like a $4,500 animal the next day. So like I said, I found some clever ways of making money. I mean, maybe that'll come back and bite me someday, but pretty healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I was, a lot of my family, like my dad and his brothers, like very business oriented. I'm always like into understanding how business works. And, there's a thing called good debt and bad debt, and I knew that me maxing out those credit cards was good debt because we knew that, there was ROI, there was return of my investment down the line because I'm reproducing, whereas I'm not buying like a even though you love shoes and some of the stuff, but stuff that don't bring anything to you. So that's how I just looked at it. I was like, good debt, bad debt. And I just knew that was good debt. And, even trying to find some like, zero interest, like credit cards for like, 6 months or a year, try to find ways to make it work.
No, if I had somebody like you, maybe I probably would have been a little riskier, but like something that's so foreign to me is managing credit cards. That's why I don't fuck around the stock market. Like if I don't really understand it, I just don't want to do it.
Yeah, and listen, you gotta be within your safe zone, but that's what it's like one of those taking those leaps and it was risky. Like you gotta realize like some of this, some of these rare stuff, like, you're putting a lot of money in and if you're getting, back then when we were allowed, if I got a couple animals from Europe, you feel a little bit, scared, and then, luckily I had Dave too, which was really a big help shipping within, the States. But yeah, that was a lot of the things I did. It was interesting,
So, we were talking about like bringing in things from Europe, like, I remember that skink market got really hot in the beginning, man, and like anything that popped up, it was like run out and grab. I always talk about it. I got like my buddy was at Ham, and he's like, dude, there's patternless northern blue tongues on this table, $9,200 or $9,500 for like a 1.2 proven. Do you want them? And I called up my buddy. He went 50-50. Fuck it, let's do it. Got them in. To this day, I've never produced an animal from that group. One of the two females died after about 5 seasons of trying to breed them back. Then finally, after only breeding patternless to patternless, I decided to breed the male to a couple of females. Nothing happened. I got my female over at Tiki's now in hopes that something's going to come out of it. But that was one where like, man, I had a couple things back then where I chased at something big, and thank God I didn't take out a credit card on it because they never brought me back a penny.
And it's too, like, I know you feel this way because I know you're a good person, is like when you get animals like that, you feel weird, like just trying to sell it and get it away to somebody because, you're setting them up for failure as well. So I've had animals too like that. But the biggest thing to me with how I ran things, and I think we have talked about this, but I like to look at things as like even though it's not a good best, analogy, but as gambling. So like the roulette wheel, for instance, like my goal when I went into the Skinks was put as many numbers as you can on the roulette wheel to win. And it's as, being at a macro scale, it's getting, as many skinks as you can, just getting a 1.1. This is it's not going to work. Understanding their wants and needs, giving them everything they want. I don't want to be in control on that. Raising things up slow, understanding temperature. People do it out there and they have success, but for me, I like to not move my animals into like a wine cooler or like, somewhere else in a small area. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't work. I just feel like there has to be like a little bit of a pulled back on the odds against you. I like to keep them in where they are, and not touch them in the brumation process. There's just so many variables that you want. And if you could put all those variables on each number on the roulette wheel, you're going to be able to have really good, in a sense, maximum of success. Especially with Shinglebacks, they're actually not, if you understand their cycling, what's great about them is like, blotched, I have to introduce. Occipitalis, I try to introduce. A lot of people don't as much. I know that introductions, because I'm very like actually you wrote in the description, I'm very attention to detail. They tell me signs. So a lot of times when you're putting, breeding pairs together, your success rate, there may be some obstacles in the way where that lock might not come. There's a lot of, maybe imbalances that make your odds a little stacked against you. I like to understand where my animals are at. And when I introduce them, I want to know that my male is fully fired up. I want to know female is fully in her window. And so with the Shinglebacks is like, it's really like, you're just raising the temperatures up real slow, and they're together and they're so harmless to each other. Like, obviously you got to watch, there's some, oddballs that will be a little nasty towards each other, but like they're little puppy dogs. The way they breed is so gentle. It's like the most like, it's weird. And even when a female's in her window, like the male like shadows her, and it's the coolest thing. Like I walk around like in the room and I'm like, I see I see that every time the female is walking, that male is like literally like, because she's starting to get into her window. He's following her everywhere she goes, and that right there, I'm like, I know I'm gonna probably most likely get something. So I think, like, to me, that's the biggest thing with Talico as a whole is, the more numbers you put on the roulette wheel, the better odds you're gonna get for success, and that's kind of and to me, and I know you know this, like 100%, like having a good ratio is like basically like the best number on that roulette wheel, because if you can have a solid ratio between the two, it's going to be very helpful. Because, like, you got 1.1, and I've had this tons of times where, like, the male just doesn't fire up. Like, he doesn't even want to breed. And then, or reverse, female's not even going into her window. And then your year's done. That year's gone. Next year, you got to wait a whole other year. So if you can have, like, a solid ratio between the two, that's why people are like, I want as many females as I can. But, this, like, having a bunch of males is very helpful too. Very helpful.
No, I think across all species, extra males is never a bad thing. And I'll tell you this, like, and I've talked about this before, but like, I remember coming into Skinks, somebody who bred them before me was talking about how you had to like put a baby sock over the female's head to keep her from fighting back. And like, for years I bred them in like bins, like higher bins, and the female would try to run out of me, just keep knocking them down and reposition them and just trying to get them there. And then you just realize how unnecessary all that stuff really was if you just pay attention to the animals. And like, even this year, like the tub they're breeding is probably about 5 or 6 inches tall. If the female, even for a second, tries to make a run for it, it's not even up for discussion. It's over. We're not even going to try today. Like, I'm not going to fight you back in.
100%. 100%. Yep. 100%.
Same thing with males too, man. Like, it's funny. I got this male from Diana, one of the pitch blacks, and like, man, he's got a fucked up personality. Like, I put a female in there, and he chomps on them in a way it sounds like it's crunching them. She's receptive.
I know that.
Just like really fucking awful. Yeah. And then like I put him in with another female, and he gently nibbles his way up her entire body, and then doesn't even lock her because he's being so gentle with her. So it's really you kind of learn your males. Now that guy's really throwing me for a loop, just how bipolar about it he is, but. Yeah. Yeah, man, like it's been an interesting year because all my years prior to this have been like, I need to get one lock out of this male, and I might have this male see 9 or 10 females. I haven't gone back for second or third locks. And because of that, my success rate has gone way down the last couple of years. So I did set up my season this year where I am doing 1.3, some 1.2. If a male bails out of me, I get 3 different males and give them 1 extra female kind of thing.
Yeah.
The only thing I don't like is, I got one of my nice Turner white females going this year, and like she's like almost pure white. So she's 3 locks in. Her first one was on the 8th, and they've all been spaced out by like 5 days or so. Man, she looks beat the fuck up. Like, and her being white, I can see everything. Like, I don't know if I'll do 3 locks next year. I think if it takes more than 2, I'm okay with missing the season because, like I said, by that 3rd lock, really starts showing on the female.
Yeah, and I mean, to me too, like, I've noticed the more locks I've gotten, the more I beat up the female. Like, I'm not as successful in an odd way. Actually, the minimal amount of locks, sometimes I have better luck, and that's usually due to, and this happens all the time, especially occipitalis. They're occipitalis and blotched. That's why sometimes I say blotched windows are like 4 days. But sometimes I really do believe, and I feel confident about this. Obviously, it's still got to be an opinion, but I'm sure there's other people watching this that would say, you know what, it is true. Like, females, they know when the job's done. And that's why sometimes it's just a 1 or 2 locks. Like this year, I had a litter of occipitalis, Western blue tongues, 1 lock. It was because of the female that I stopped, because every time I put that male in there, Jesus, she would go crazy on that male. I'm like, you know what? I'm done. And I mean, that's what kind of helps when you have the numbers too. Like, you feel a little bit better of, like, sometimes what happens is, and it's understandable, where some breeders, they have like a small stock and they really want to nail it on the head of getting like a bunch of locks. But sometimes it does work against you. So I think that 2 lock, 3 lock, I think is really perfect. And then you kind of, and to me, again, it's attention to detail. The biggest thing that I've noticed with females is, and I know you know this, is the submissive state. When they're submissive, that's like a game changer. When they're like willing and kind of let their guard down, something is going on. And I know for a fact that, she's in her window. She's not running around peeing and pooping everywhere, opening her mouth. It's a total submissive state. She lets it happen. And like, I'm pretty sure this, like your odds of getting a litter are a little bit higher than it would be the other way around of just like a crazy, craziness going on. So like I noticed that like, cool. But like there's some understanding where some breeders don't have the stock. And like when you have a big collection, sometimes it's a little bit easier to say, all right, well, 2 locks, they're going crazy, they try to just let it be. Whereas some people feel like they want to get the job done a little bit more, but sometimes it can work against you. So that's how I look at that. Sometimes you just gotta, it's done, move on, and then it's all a learning experience. I've learned that myself. Like like just get 2 locks, maybe try to push 3, but usually that's good. And again, we talked about this on the last episode with Alex. Is my mentor taught me this, and it's so interesting is that he would put L and R on the label with dates, and he would do that because being that they have 2 hemipenes, he would mark it so you can manipulate breeding, and I do it myself. Is when you're putting in a male, if you're being that he has the L and R is left hemipene and right hemipene, so you mark it down and label it as left, knowing that you got that done. And listen, it's not 100%, but what if that left hemipene wasn't firing? Your goal now is to try to push it on the right side, and there is ways to go about it. It's not easy. It comes with it's like swinging a baseball bat, but I would get it on try to get the male on the left side, and then he would work that one side, and then that next day I would try to position. What I do is I just like grab the female and kind of position her a certain way where she's walking a certain way, and then I would put the male on that side to try to get his other hemipene. And it's just that, again, that's a piece of that number. That's a number on the roulette wheel that kind of just ticks that box. And again, a lot of it could be opinion, but I think the more you can do, the better success you could have,
So all my experiences are pretty much all northern breeding, like just year after year. We had some other stuff. Cheryl would put the Easterns together and work with them, blotchy wise. So like everything I know is northern, and I can't guarantee this, but I feel like my guys have a favorite side and they only ever use that one side. And maybe occasionally might switch sides, but like, they're switching sides 4 or 5 times before they even try to flip the tail. And you could tell when they're on like the one side, they almost look awkward, and they get on the other side and they're like, perfect, I know what I'm doing. So I'll play around.
We're strong-handed. Like we have our strong hand, and then we have that weak side.
Yeah. So I'll try, because I'm not quite done locking. I want to say I probably have about 3 or 4 more days before I think my window's gonna pretty much be shutting. I got a couple males that just now shed, so my season might go a little late on them. Some females that I didn't catch their window yet. But again, man, I don't see them switching sides a lot. I think they pick this off a lot of times and they just don't mess around. But I'm gonna try this shit. I'll try to get the other side.
I've got this from Dave. Is a badminton racket really helps. I am pretty like I don't see. I mean, I do believe you. I do understand that there is a side that they choose from, but I have pretty good success at getting both if I could. But again, I have bred Northerns, but I haven't really like done that too much with them. Whereas like some of the stuff that are that I have here, like there's not a lot established, so I try my best to do everything odds in my favor wise I can.
I know you're saying. Well, let's talk a little bit about the breeding side of things. But so your cages, was those designs you came up with? Is that something you inherited? Like, walk me through. Let's start with the shingles.
There's a bunch that went into it. So like I'm big into like I look at it as like if it was cooking. So like you have your grandma's recipe from like many years ago, and like I'm a big believer in like taking that recipe but like altering it a little bit. And again, also like my goal with those pits where I love turtles and tortoises. Like that's where I started when I was a kid. And like, I wanted that feeling of like, how like a lot of these turtle guys have the turtle, like tortoise pens, like Chris Leone at Garden State, he has a lot of those pens. And like, I wanted it so like you could be able to just reach in and grab a shingleback, like just you don't have to like open up a cage or. And then there's the other side of it, and I'll bring his name up, and if you watch it, that's what I love about YouTube and some of the videos that are put out, because you can learn a lot from them, and it's very helpful. Like so, like for instance, Joe Ball made a video. I think it was, I want to say with Dave Kaufman, or it might have been Brian, where he made a great point where each of these types have their benefit and have their downside. So meaning outdoors had a great thing for this, but then they wouldn't eat that great. You put them in a tub on belly heat, they'd eat great, but it doesn't look that great functional wise. And then you would have a cage, and he talked about this, I remember it. You would have a cage and it would be great, but then you'd walk up to it and they spaz out and run away. So I tried to like put all those in one. So the pit can be brought outside. The ultratherm heating pad act as if belly heat like a tub. And then that cage, visually you can see the animals, but they have more of a naturalistic kind of thing. So it's like everything in one is what I was looking for. And that's pretty much what that prototype was, is to try to bring everything in one. And then including like that tortoise like style, like, when you go up and pick a tortoise up, it's like this, you grab it, pick it up. It's like something easy and accessible. And I did that was kind of like how I wanted to do it. And that's just the start of that. I want something more advanced. So I think we talked about this as well, is when I'm going to be building another facility, and I want to I understand, we do this thing, and I guess, actually MJ would understand, you would understand, a lot of like green trees and emeralds, and a lot of those people don't realize what hydration is. They think in a sense that it's just drinking water and that's their hydration. But you got to realize outside in their environment is so important to have some type of humidity, or in a sense that is in a sense on a macro scale is hydration. So what I think is that they intake a lot of hydration into their tissue as well. It's not just what they intake, orally. So I want to, when I build this new facility, especially with shinglebacks, because their babies are literally half the size of them, and they have extreme trouble. And I've had to have emergency C-sections because of a breaching. And luckily I spotted that. I knew something was wrong. And, and I knew. So the thing is, I would like to have something where it's a pit style with little spraying mechanisms that kind of go off a little bit, maybe once in the morning, because I know in Australia, or I know in anywhere in general, there's dew points, and again, that is hydration into the tissue on the exterior that is drawn in, that I think is very important than just orally drinking. But I think it really helps with birthing, and to me, I would like to have like a pit style where either a subfloor or something on the side connected that has some type of way they can burrow and get really good moisture, like whether it's like a mixture between cypress and then some of like dirt mixture. And I actually even want to have it enclosed and have maybe a couple of spray nozzles in there as well, maybe going off like twice a day, so that they can stay dry in the environment in the pit, but they can escape. And now it doesn't just help with defecation. It helps with defecation. It helps with health in general. And the biggest thing to me is it really helps them with birthing. I believe that a lot of these Taliqua species, they burrow down late term and they go underground because, they're vulnerable, delivering babies out in the open, and it's dry in that environment. Whereas they're hunkering down, burrowing down. And I do believe that there's a level to birthing that brings in a hydration, but acts as if it's its own lubricant. Sounds weird. And this is all, in a sense, opinion, but I have an understanding, and I really understand that those attention to detail things, that I believe that late term, how important it is that they have some way of like burrowing, bringing in some moisture. I think it acts as if it's like a lubricant in a sense. And if they're too dry and delivering babies that are nearly half the size, in a sense, having two babies that would be their size, because if you put them, side by side, they're pretty much will be the size of mom. It's a lot, and I don't want. I'm a perfectionist, and I don't want these problems anymore. Now they're going to happen no matter what, but I have this hunch that it's important that they get on the exterior for their tissue on the outside. I think it helps bringing like a way of another form of hydration, and I do believe that that's like big with like I mean a lot of animals, but you know green tree pythons, emerald tree boas. I believe that that's a big part of that. You know, I think that it helps with especially live bearing animals. You know, if they're too dehydrated, man, that's a problem. That's a big problem trying to push babies out. You know, so that's going to be the step when I go and you know, and the other thing was, if my township allows me, unfortunately, you know, you want to live the American dream, but sometimes it's not 100%. But so what I want is, you know, a pit style like that, an opening, some type of opening that they can go walk into another pit into a greenhouse, so that I give them natural sunlight as well. That's something I'm going to be working on, but that's all part of that manifestation, that vision, and but I just think there's other steps that need to be, and like nothing on the hobby. I mean, these are steps in those directions, but a lot like I look at it as like you know I use this example a lot is like if and again this is where we're so premature I feel in this hobby but not because I see the changes is we're so used to this box cage light cool side. That's like if you like were to take a car and just take the shell of the car and you know hey let's drive it like it's not realistic. So I think that we're going in these stages in the herpetocultural world that you're bringing not just the tree of the forest, you know, and the sun, you're bringing in so many different elements, you know, just like a car, you're bringing all those like little wires that make it work and, you know, every little internal thing that makes it functionable. I think that's like the next part in a sense to the hobby here. And I feel like we're going to do our best to bring the whole forest in like, you know, one you know, size cage. And it's not easy, but I think that's what's going to be a big part of, you know, herpetoculture in general. And, you know, especially some of those shingleback species, man, I already see it that, you know, it's a bummer. You know, I'm like a very emotional person. So like watching, you know, a shingleback suffer and then, you know, having to rush it to the hospital and get a C-section. And especially it was one of my favorite skinks. You know, her name was Cutie Pie, which is a Taliqua Ragusa aspera, which is like the southern eastern forms. So I'll tell you the story on that is like, and this is the other part of a learning situation. I knew it. That's why I'm so big into observing. And we have talked about this on the last podcast, but I seen the female, she spit out a baby. And I knew I had a really big hunch that she had another one just to the size of her. But then she was a little bit of a smaller body size. And I saw her still splaying, which is where she puts her two back legs and she's trying to like push something out. And I'm like, that's odd. And I'm like, and she kept trying to do it like all day. And I'm like, dude, something's wrong here. And I could tell, I noticed in her eyes and the way she was tongue flicking, actually really not tongue flicking. She looked pooped. So I'm like, dude, something's wrong here. And then I said, you know what? So I like not to mess with them, but I took her out and I palpated her and I felt a giant baby in there. So, well, before that, even I knew something was wrong. So being that there's a sac and there's a membrane, well, I saw that some of the water broke near her cloaca, and I knew right away that baby broke that membrane to try to come out. And I knew that I knew she was a ticking time bomb. So this was like the next day at like night, like 6 o'clock. And thank God, this was so important to have good vets, and there are really good ones out there. And you know, thanks to Dr. Scott Stahl, he was there with me, and I have a nice local vet here that does exotics. Her name's Dr. Savo. So I gave her a call. She was busy. Luckily, it was her surgery day, and you could tell like she was definitely busy. And just she knows what I got going on, and she was there. I said, I know there. I said that I think I need an emergency surgery. Like I feel very confident. She's like, "Are you sure there's a baby in there?" And I'm like, "Dr. Savo, I'm like 100% positive. Like I palpated her. I know there's a baby in there." And I actually even said that like 95% that baby's dead, and now it's just focusing on trying to help mom. So rushed her in, and I'll tell you guys like the breakdown, like, and some of the things that I do, and I think is for the listeners out there. So I went to preparation protocol basically. So basically, like I told her, if this, I believe that the animal's dead, but if she's alive, there's certain protocols they do to try to help them come back to life. But like I said, one thing I do is I'll actually, and I've done this and it's worked before, but this is on babies that are like somewhat dying, but like on the cusp. And this is breeder error. This isn't like they naturally should have died. Like some of the things that happened were my parameters. That these are all learning experiences. So what I do is, I'll now I'm forgetting the get me, David.
You're good. You're rolling, man.
No. The I forget now. The sac. What is it? What do they call it?
The embryonic sac.
Embryonic sac. There you go. That's fine. So what I do is I'll cut that off, right? I'll put it in a Ziploc and just smash it like if you're smashing chicken cutlet, like a chicken breast. And I'll smash it, and then what I do is I get like a dropper and I'll pull some of it. And I'll let them drink some of it. Some of you can water it down, even put a little critical care in there. And I just use it throughout the day because that's what they're supposed to eat when they come out. It gives them a couple days. So I told the doctor that, but I knew that baby was most likely dead. So what do you know? Emergency C-section, and the baby was breached, and it was Dr. Stahl told me this, and Dr. Savo, that it was stuck in the pelvic inlet. So basically, the baby decided to knock him out the cloaca and took a U-turn. But this baby was large. So luckily she survived. It was like literally everything worked out. She's 100%. But this is the thing is too, so this is where like the mind plays tricks on you, but it's so important to understand your animals. And this is why I made this decision not to bring this one to the hospital. I mean, to the vet. So same situation. I had a Ragusa, a Western form of Shingleback. I knew she had two babies. I palpate, and that's another way of learning breeding too. That's another, number on the roulette wheel. I palpate animals, understanding where females are in ovulation. But so I knew she had two babies. I palpated them. I could feel both of them. So same situation. She spit out a baby, right? And I knew she had another one. And a day goes by, and I'm like, oh man. And like some of the breeders out there, they say that they do sometimes drop them, maybe a day or two. It's very rare that they go too far out. So day 2 goes by, and I know she has another one. So I'm like in my head now because I just did an emergency C-section on this one. But the thing that got me from holding back is she wasn't like Cutie Pie. She wasn't acting the same. She was very chasey. She was chasing me. She even ate food. Saw her drinking. You know what? I'm going to hold off on this. But what do you know? 5 days later from the first baby, I go in there. And this was a trio. I'm like, the one female had one baby, and then this female that was holding 2 had one. And I counted. I'm like, oh, there's 3. And what do you know? She dropped another one. So then there's that like mind game of like, sometimes it's worth waiting too. But I just think it's so important to understand what your animals are doing, because Cutie Pie, I knew for a fact something was wrong with her. This female, I didn't.
And now, do you contribute dehydration to that, or do you think that, well, at least on the first one, or do you think that was just a random occurrence that could have happened to anybody?
I think this one seemed vibe-wise a random occurrence, and the reason, can't take hydration out of the equation. Again, I'll be honest with you, I don't have, which I'm going to try to work on this year. I don't have as much like crazy humid hides in there. I do mist really well, but I just don't think it's good enough. When you mist it, if it's dry, it doesn't mean anything. It goes away fast unless you have limited ventilation. But these are open pits, so I think it was probably could have been dehydration, but I think mainly she had a smaller body. She's small, I think she had that second baby was giant. Like even my doctor, even the vet techs there were like, this thing is huge. How did she get that? How did she have that size baby in there? So this is the other thing. And I've learned this from others. I learned this here and I learned this from Dave as well. And this is great info for anybody watching is I think it has to do with uh, having animals too big. You know, you got to realize these if you're overfeeding your animals, it could be a big problem. And it takes so little for it to be a really big problem. These babies are so large coming out that you have dehydration, you have overfeeding. If they're positioned just a little wrong and they're too big, that's a big problem. Any type of fatty sacs because they're eating so much, they create these reserves and on their internals. That blocks anything, any pathway, you're done. And I think this is the big thing, and this is why it's so important to have large obstacles and bigger enclosures and temperature fluctuations, ambient changes. These all affect metabolic rates, and that's where I think the big thing is when you have these cages. Even I'll be honest with you, I don't even like 4-footers because this is what they're doing. They're coming from their cool side. They're walking out. They're eating a bunch. They walk 2 steps. They get a little heat and then go hunker down. What happens is their metabolism, they're intaking all this food, but there's not anything really burning. And what happens is the female's getting large and those babies are getting big inside there too because there's nothing. You realize well, they're out in the wild. The females are on the hunt, and food's scarce. It's not easy, and they got to travel and move to get where they need to get. That metabolic rate's moving. Their energy is burning. So I think it's important to understand overfeeding is it could be a big problem, and understand that's why I'm big on seasonal changes of food. Like early on, I like to give a little bit more protein, and it's natural. I mean, go look anywhere outside in Australia. Go look anywhere here in the United States. Is when they wake up, there's no vegetation. Any animal, they're going to be going towards more protein based. That's where their opportunity is. Being that they are opportunistic. So springtime, what's happening early spring where there's not enough plumage, there's not enough vegetation, they're feeding up, and it helps with their fat reserves from winter. They're building these fat reserves and they're in preparation. And in a sense, I think, mentally it's a trigger as well to say, hey, like we're good for gestation process because, we got an overabundance of protein, we're set. But what happens is you just don't want to continue that too much. It could be a problem. Now it might not be, but there's going to come a time where it could be. And that's a big problem. And again, some people don't, that's why especially with these species, it's important to find good vets. It really is. It's not worth it, because you can't just get, a jack of all trades vet. There's not a lot of info on this, and sometimes it could be too late. So having those vets in place to know, hey, like, it's that time of year. We might be having a C-section here.
Yeah, it's where I live. I think my closest vet that I know is a reptile guy because he bred Hondurans and he was also into falconry. It's about 2.5 hours for me.
Yeah, wow.
I got a redneck vet out here, like a guy that's like 80 years old and still kicking and just like gives you 2 seconds but knows what's going on.
Yeah.
I think there's things in his wheelhouse, and then I think there might be things he just woun't want to do. He's helped with a couple things animal related, but honestly, that's the one downside of where I live. And like you said, even when you're in like a city, it's hard to find a good reptile vet. At least somebody who's experienced with more than just a few things. So that's a disadvantage. Now, fortunately, I haven't been in many positions where I've needed vets. But yeah, when I do, it's a bitch. And I have a couple guys on call, but again, it's 2.5 hours away.
Yeah, and I mean, even yourself, like, and I like just being around in herpetoculture, you kind of have an understanding and friends to reach out to that are in those situations where we all learn and understand things. I have, Dr. Scott Stahl is a big part of that. I've learned a lot from him, and, just understanding the process and, understanding, how these guys work, being that they're live bearing animals, and understanding like, timing with males and, follicular growth and, correlating that, plays a big role in understanding how to breed these guys. And again, the biggest thing on your side is, I always say this is the best example I use. Just like a steak, if you have a thick piece of meat, you put it on the grill and you put that burner all the way up. Well, yeah, the top's going to be cooked, but the inside's going to be raw. And it's the same thing with this. If you're, I learned this from Richard Connolly from Australia, is like, and it's a great point, is, when you wake these guys up from winter and put them into summer-like conditions, you're done. Your window's gone. And that's why I believe, like, low and slow. I know here in the United States, we want everything so fast, and it's such a disadvantage when you do things too fast. It's so important to really take your time. Females need to grow their follicles before they and I've learned this from Scott, is Dr. Scott Stahl, is there's that follicle that's attached to the ovary, and it's slowly growing. And actually, I could feel it when I palpate. And this is what I learned from Dr. Scott Stahl, because I would go on the phone and I'm like, and I do this with my leeches too, because I palpate them too. I'm like, I feel the follicle. It's very circular. It's almost like a marble. Well, first it's like a tic tac, and then it starts to grow into like a marble, and it's circular. You can feel it. It's literally circular. And then it disappears. And I'm like, I told Dr. Scott Stahl, I'm like, why is it disappearing on me? And then all of a sudden, it comes back, and you can feel now it's just like in the gecko terms, it's an oval shape like an egg. And then the same with the skinks, is it's larger and more like substance. And he would tell me, he's like, because what happens is because when it's on that ovary and the follicle's kind of growing, when you see it disappear, it's because she released it into the oviduct, and you don't see it, you don't feel it anymore. And it's processing, and then pretty much settles where it needs to be, and then it starts to grow, and then that's when it reappears. And I'm like, that's why. So there is a correlation in understanding how to breed animals that way too. When you palpate, when you feel them in those circular stages or those tic-tac stages, that's a good part. That's where you need to be when you try to breed them, because that's when fertilization occurs. And then, so what happens is when you're breeding these guys and you put them from winter into summer, that's what's happening. Your males aren't really ready yet, or are ready, but you already warmed it so much that the females already released their follicles from their ovary and dropped into the oviduct, and it's too late. You can't fertilize it now. I think that's what's really happening, and that's something that I have figured out, and that's why palpating helps me. But for people that don't know how to palpate, the best thing to do is understanding just low and slow. Yes, have your good hot spot, but those cool sides still need to stay somewhat cool, because those follicles need to develop before they're getting pushed, develop and get fertilized.
So palpitating is one thing that, like, I always watched the video back in the day, like Ralph Davis would show you how to do it. You count how many follicles are in there. Like, I always found it very interesting, but I never really used it that much. A lot of species I worked with, you just could kind of tell when it was time. And now I use an ultrasound. And like before I came on the episode today, I think I did probably about 250 ball pythons today. And like you said, I can tell by the shape of the follicle, the density on the screen, if it's starting to look cloudy, like I know what's going on all the way through, and I'll ultrasound them every 20 to 30 days. I don't waste a male on when she's not developing. There's that certain window. If you get a couple good locks, it's going to be a done deal. So I do plan a lot of things out that way. And Bill Brandt, when he was building his collection, he was ultrasounding all his females, and he was calling out ovulations and all this other stuff. I want to say the 1 year he said he had let's say it's 28 ovulations, and he only got 8 litters. So the ultrasound with them and the way he was doing it, it didn't read true to some other species done in the past. I've never put an ultrasound on a skink. I might do it for fun tomorrow, just see what's going on. But definitely not I don't want to be dependent on that with certain species. I just like to know when it's over. I just want to know.
Yeah, to me, the biggest thing for people out there, it is very technical, and I always say it's like swinging a baseball bat. We're not going to know how to swing and hit a baseball, perfectly, but if you do it a bunch of times, you understand. But the biggest thing that, and I know you'll attest to this without putting hands on or anything like that, is the submissive stage of a female. I think that's the big one. When they submiss and they let it happen, that to me is like a really, really good sign. Listen, it's not always, but I think more percentages of you getting a litter than, you know, a female running around with their mouth open and pooping everywhere. Like, you're probably slim to none on that. But and it, you know, like the best is when you know when you have a litter, when you like you're gonna have a nice litter, is like all of a sudden some people will come over and I'm like, oh my god, she's definitely gonna have a litter. Like, you lift up the cork flat or see them in their hide, they're like a balloon, like literally a balloon out of nowhere. You're like, wait, definitely gonna have a nice litter because you are huge, and that's when they're ovulating. And usually when they blow up like that, it's a solid sign that something's going on in there. And if that continues to look like that, you know, it usually ends up that you're gonna have a nice full litter.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
And you know, talking setup and all that, like, you know, talking boas, this old boa guy used to say, you know, they don't want to have their babies in the parking lot. You got to give them somewhere they feel like it's going to be secure. And for fun last year, I threw in big hide boxes with all my boas. Every single one of my boas had their litter underneath the hide box. You'd see them underneath it a little bit leading up to it. And then you go in and there would just be her tail underneath. And you knew she was close. You go back a couple hours later. I have added hide boxes for the skinks in the past. I've added a lot of really small ones in there. If she had her litter, they have somewhere to hide if they want. You know, we had a couple that got impacted with a little bit of bedding and died. And because of that, we started doing pee pads when they were getting closer to actually having their litters.
Smart.
Now, last year I didn't do it that way. The year before that, I didn't do it. I didn't really have any casualties because of that, but I usually do like anywhere from 1 inch to 2 inches of cypress. And like you said, they'll burrow. They'll go from the hot side to the cool side. Like, they really spend a lot of time. Plus, you know, I'll hit it with the hose like once a week. So it'll be like
That's
a heavy
good.
day, then it'll slowly dry. And then by the time the week's over, it's dry. So there's always a cycle of that. And that's all summer long. But
yeah,
you know,
I like to spray, like getting closer to birthing. I love to spray, and that goes back to like with Joe Ball. You know, I learned that from him is, you know, where you have those sliding glass cages is, you know, I would walk into the room and like you see these females freaking out and run around. I'm like, they're not gonna want to have a litter like that. So, you know, I would even put like some of the real shy ones, I would put like paper on the glass. And it's like, for me, it's like blinders on a horse, you know, it calms them down a little bit. And you just understand those certain things that they need. And, you know, blue tongue skinks, I know, love cork flats. Like I'll put like a nice cork flat. They're always under that. They love that tight, like underneath. I mean, even when you see people in Australia, like a lot of them are under the tins, you know, that are out there. And they love that security. Not only is it security, it's, you know, there's a humid hide basically too as well, and then the other one, it acts as an insulation. It keeps that temperature. You know, it's like almost like a little tortoise. It's like a protector, like a shell, and I think it helps with, you know, really when it gets too warm, they burrow themselves, and it acts like a shield for insulation. So I think there's so many benefits to that. You know.
I really wish I would have stocked up on cork bark before the price went up, because cork bark 5 years ago was like half the price now. Like, my buddy's like clearing out storage units. He's been sitting out of that stuff because he's getting top dollar. I hate buying high, man. Like, I wish I would
Yeah.
have bought that.
Well, a lot of that comes from like Spain, I want to say. So it's a lot of those like import, you know, too. A lot of that cost. So like, you know, and then, you know, inflation and all that stuff, everything starts to go up even more. And yeah, I understand where you're at on that. Sometimes it's like, I know what you're saying. I'm like, damn, sometimes I'm like, I need this. So I'm just going to do my best to, you know, bite the bullet. But yeah, you're right. And the thing is too, sometimes you'll buy and it's like, unless you're like, if you're buying in like bulk or like, you know, it's like it stinks because you want flats, but some of them are not big enough. And I'm like, dang. Luckily, I have geckos, I can utilize them. But like, you know, it stinks. You need like a certain size. You know, you can't like buy a bulk and you get all these little small chunks, and it's like they're not going to hide under that. You know.
No, for sure. And, you know, kind of talking like, you know, I always say in the beginning of the hobby, we figured out the bare minimal you had to do to be successful with breeding a reptile. And like what you're saying, there's so much more to it now. Like, that little bit of more effort, even if you were successful before, there's no reason not to improve on what you're doing.
Yeah, and I fully agree. I mean, I tell this to everyone all the time, and it's like look at it this way. Like, I just can't believe it. Like I tell a lot of people this. I'm like, dogs have been around for thousands of years. You know, reptiles have been around, like, if that of 100, like, not even. And, like, that's how premature we are. So, like, we should never harp on each other and get on each other, understand that, we're starting to wake up and we are starting to kind of create a standard. Listen, nothing's perfect, and no one should be ripping on each other for it. These guys are in way worse situations out in the wild. And yes, they go through a lot of, bad things with like imports, but, people in captivity and are playing their part and doing their part to try to preserve these animals so we don't have to touch, animals coming in from the wild. But, these animals are going to get domesticated too. So, like, I even see it some because I have some like Shingleback, some blotch blue tongues, like from different bloodlines that are like insanely like nuts. Like I have Shinglebacks that you can't touch them, but then you have ones that are, like the most of them are really calm, but I have some that like that bloodline's nuts. But that's a part of the domestication. I feel like we have not domesticated these guys yet. Like not even close. If we haven't been around 100 years, like what's going to happen in another 200, 300, 400 years from now? Like that's going to be insane where this hobby can go. So like everyone thinks like this when they say like the hobby's dead. That's nuts, man. We're just starting, dude.
No, I don't hear much from people that are saying it's dead. I hear it from more new people that they think, this is the end of the world when,
No.
it's really not. It comes in waves. I try not to listen to that chatter. I just grind a little harder when necessary. I always say when the years are slow, hold back more of your best stuff because in 2-3 years when the hobby picks back up, be in a better position. Everything comes in waves, man.
Yeah, and to me, like for anybody watching out there, like I always say this, it's like unfathomable. It's like, now's the time to buy, because I'd rather be buying at a low, building my collection and growing my collection so that when I'm able to sell, I'm buying in a high then instead of buying in a high and then slowly start to buy, sell off in the low. So like now for anybody out there, this is it. This is the new low. And I think that, trying to get some deals to build something, it could be very good now. So
Yeah, 1,000% a buyer's market. During COVID, it was a seller's market. And, a lot of people, good for people sticking out over the years with certain things that weren't popular. And now everybody wants them. I talk about like locality boas. Argentines were just a couple $100 forever. Now they're $600-800. There's all these like rare, or not, I wouldn't necessarily call them rare, but different colubrid projects that like kind of fell off. And now they're worth 5 times what they were. Like, I'm glad when people stick it out and eventually it pays out for them.
exactly. Yeah. As the saying goes, you got to be in it to win it. Right. So,
Yeah. So your shingles, man. So your shingles communal year round, right? All right.
yes.
But your blotchies, your westerns, those are all kept individually. You introduced for breeding.
Yeah. Like, listen, I could do it, but like to me, I like to maximize my opportunity, but limit the, unnecessary crap that comes along. Yeah. So like meaning like occipitalis and blotch blue tongues are a little more like rigorous and like a lot of the males could be very like relentless. So I do an introduction and I do it to limit dangerous things, but understand, the maximum time to breed and in those moments. So like, I introduce knowing that my female is close to her window, and I have, and I love this. You got to have your experienced males. I have experienced males that, for instance, I have a old school male that's very old but very experienced, and he's my cue of understanding what female's in her window. So like, I'll put a female that I think might be close, but he's my tester. So like, I'll put her in, and female occipitalis like to throw bluffs. They might be in her window, but they want a strong, vigorous male to carry a litter. So they'll throw a bluff. So I have a male, experienced male that will come in, and what he does is he does like a little speed walk, and then kind of freezes right a little bit, like a couple, like maybe like a foot away from her, and he just does a couple tongue flicks, and if she's not ready, turns her right back into his hide and calls it a day. He knows not to mess, but if she's in her window and she's throwing that bluff and he comes out, jets out, tongue flick, whack, like just grabs her shoulder, and then he'll literally, and all my males do this, will pick her up. Like literally, I'm not kidding. Pick her up by the mouth, straight up in the air, and then you'll see her. If she's in her window, that bluff totally turned into full-blown submissive. She'll just be like, and then and just submiss. And he'll grab her, vigorously grab her, pick her up, like, oh, like, look at me, I'm this big, strong male, and kind of walks around with her. And then he'll, pretty much pin her and then, do his job. And a lot of the males do, because I think in the wild, I think they're programmed to do this, because most of them all do this. And I'm sure, you'll know, and a lot of people that are, have Taliqua, what they'll do is they'll breed, right? And then again, this is the big one, is that female is fully submissive, but she goes, after they breed that lock, they'll both be in a trance. And even I love when the female's in that trance. She's just sitting there, fully submissive, and both the male's still locked on, and they're just laying side by side. And I just let them be. I go about do the work I got to do. And what will happen is she's pulling all that, grabbing some of that sperm, and it's probably fertilizing. But the biggest thing is he's regaining energy. And now in the wild, for a fact, they might not see each other again. And this is an opportunity. So that male will build his energy back up, and then I'll come in like maybe an hour, 2 hours later, and they're breeding again. They'll do it again. So I'm like, all right, cool. And that's it. I just let it be. And same thing with the blush. They do the same. So yeah, that's kind of how I do it. But again, female being submissive is just a huge one for me.
Okay. Do you ever breed two different males to the same female in the same season, just to be a little more secure about what you're doing? Or do you
so like I'll overlap. Like I do this thing where like this is what I like to do. I like to have a male to a specific female and let him lock her twice, but he's only just going to stay with her. I'm not bouncing around, because I've noticed sometimes that dilutes them, dilutes somewhere something. So I like to give that female a day's rest and the male a day's rest, and then get another lock, and then I'll overlap. So he'll get another day and then go to another female to like almost like cap it off, and then I'll have another male swap on that third lock if I can. I like to, or sometimes if I could get, if I have an extra male that hasn't really bred, I'll just do a 2-lock thing, a 1-on-1 with the male female, and then maybe get another male that hasn't bred with that female. I try to not to dilute my males, like breed them to like a ton of different females. I like to do a 1.1 style and then kind of overlap on that like second or third lock, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. One of the reasons I brought that up too is, I got this little group. It's like a 1.3, and essentially the lineage is caramel, Jeff Green red, and Turner white all mixed. But they kind of made this weird kind of shade. They all kind of look a little bit different. And I finally got the male to breed one of the females today. He did her yesterday or 2 days ago, missed immediately. Got in today, popped out pretty fast. She struggled. She was very submissive. Once he was in, she struggled. Both times, I didn't really see a lot coming out of him. So, like, I'm almost debating if I should back up all of his females now, just because I don't know if he's not pumping, because some of my animals, man, I mean, it's a little gross. I mean, you can hear it coming out of them like a fire hose, and then, it's just a mess.
They make those little
guy,
man, pops.
Yeah, I love the pumps, man.
Yeah.
But, by the way, everything about breeding skinks and talking about it is very rapey, like very awkward. Like, it never sounds good. But so I may have to back him up, because, like I said, I have males pop out, but at least I see something come out. With him, I'm not really seeing anything pumping, so I'm a little scared.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed that happens a lot when you overbreed males, which that to me, it's like, in my head, say it's like, in a sense, could be pointless. That's why I try to and I'm sure this. I mean, you've done this longer than me, where like you try to let the males kind of get a break, and that's the part, like you just brought it up, like that's the part that like I like when things are out of your control, it kind of gets a little bit like not impatient, but like you're like a little like almost frustrated, because you missed that lock. Well, now you have to wait, and then it's like you're playing that like the time is ticking. And then I always say there's never a plan A. There's never a plan A. There's always a B and a C with these guys because something might not work. You might have to change your plan up. And it's like it never always goes. You want it to go perfect, but you know that it's never always perfect.
I don't regret. Well, I had to be here, but I didn't get to start pairing Skinks till like 7 time today. And then I put in 30 minutes. I got 3 locks and I called it a day. Like, we got this cold front coming through, and I'm already at the tail end of what I believe their window is. Like, it's supposed to get down to like -5 here at some points. I'm a little worried that they're going to completely turn off after this weekend. I'm going to probably go in tomorrow and like maybe go one more day, but I kind of have the expectation that my season may be over after this cold front goes out.
Well, maybe, I mean, even that storm could help too with breeding. It might fire some up. You never know. I mean, it's not 100%, but it could help. But yeah, I know this. I feel bad. Like a lot of people that have animals that are like, that have bred already. Like with this storm coming, like I'm nervous. But I haven't even woken my animals up yet. They're not going to be waking up until like another 2-3 weeks. And depending on what the temperatures are, but. Yeah, a lot of people are going to be, in it with this storm. Looks like it's hitting like most of the country. So there's a lot of reptile keepers probably on edge right now. But
Well, I ultrasounded all the ball pythons today because with the storm coming in, I wanted who to pair. I panicked that the skinks might shut down. The ball pythons, I want to know who's in the high follicles. I wanted to make sure there was a male in there tonight. I bet you 90% or 100% will be locked tomorrow, man. Like, it's just going to be that way. But again, with the skinks, the building holds heat really well, but that still radiates through, man. Like, you could still feel it even when it's like 75 degrees in there.
Yeah.
But
that's I mean, I'm hoping that with this storm, it kind of helps that my animals are still down. I'd rather that than like, if I had some of these guys up and then a power outage came, I'd be like, oh man, dude, that'd be really bad. Especially some of the cooler climated. You just don't want to mess that up.
No.
Yeah.
So, we were talking with, Manny, and he was talking about that 1 year he rented that one side room that kind of had the sun beating on it. It kind of stayed in the 70s, but it was dark, and they woke up after a couple weeks. That kind of feels like my year. I didn't really have a special area to put them in the building. So in all honesty, I just kind of put the Rachs face to face, put a dark tarp over them, kind of had it over the top where the ceiling was, so maybe a little bit of air would get in there.
Yeah.
And I never really got super cold. And honestly, when they started scratching, I brought them up, I got a meal, and I started going. And to be honest with you, they went at the exact – my first lock last year was on the 8th. This year was also on the 8th. But the previous year, it was on the 28th. So, like, when my season ended last year is when it started the previous year. This year, again, I'm starting early. I'm pretty confident because the females really seem to be into it. But my males, some of them went into shed like halfway in and are just now coming out of shed. And when they were in shed, completely shut down.
I hate that, yeah.
Yeah, so it's going to be, this is like that final grind. I'm going to have to kind of get a little clever, understand some things just aren't going to work this year. I'm pretty excited about this year, to be honest with you, man. Like certain colors I've been working on for a long time. I got some animals back from Cheryl that she worked on that is complementing some of my stuff I'm doing right now. Like, I might have to hold back a lot of skinks next year because I had a lot of pairings I'm excited about.
I mean, that's what it's about, though. It's the excitement of like what's gonna happen, and like it's like for me, I'm in the excited, nervous stage because I didn't start waking mine up, and like I just always get like I want it to work out, and but at the same time, once it's said and done, and you start seeing like your females ovulate, you get like really excited, and you just what's gonna pop out is like what it's about, and I don't know. I think the skinks are. I believe that there's going to be. I have a feeling they're going to, pretty much blow up, in my opinion. Especially some of the morph stuff that like Heather and Ron are working with, and Manny, and I think that's going to be a big in play. Like for instance, like I think we might talk about this, but like when the crested geckos, there was a time where like they weren't really as like they are popular, but like once a morph came out, like the lily white or like when that xanthic came out. That's when like the normal stuff became like so big because I think this was gonna happen with the skinks is like not everyone's gonna be able to afford, 2 visuals or even a visual. They might get like a head or a couple heads, but you're gonna need some like more affordable skinks as well. So like I feel like that's where that market's going to be brought up because people are going to be getting that visual and then wanting something else to go with it that's a little bit more affordable, but that will be where demand starts to come in a little bit. So I think and some of the unique stuff I'm working with, I feel like it's going to be I think there's upside, a lot of upside.
Yeah, I never downsize. I always upsize. Like
Yeah.
I said, I'm either upsizing quality. Sometimes I may go a little heavier and get another rack of something. I'm pretty content where I'm at with skinks, though. I got 4 racks. Each rack holds 18 animals. That seems like enough blue tongue skinks. All I have is northerns. I don't think I'll ever exceed that space, to be honest with you. But what I was trying to get at, and I lost my train of thought because I said something I didn't want to say. Everything this market or everything this species needs right now to take off, we have, like you said. Readily available mutations that are actually being produced in the United States successfully season after season. The rare stuff like you have and a couple other names in the hobby that people are successful breeding things that for a long time people didn't think you could breed. And I think the demand will be there once RGI gets the shed test done. I honestly believe, especially with the mutations, I couldn't go out and buy an albino if I didn't know what sex it was. That is a very expensive animal. Of course, I would probably want it to be a male. Even though sometimes in the past we've heard about males not being great breeders. We're past that now.
Yeah.
But like I said, I want some control over my buy. Anytime I've gone into something where I buy where things are not sexed, the sex ratio never works in my advantage. It's either nothing but females or nothing but males. There's never a good ratio. And
it's deflating, you kind of go like, that's where you like, not that you want to give up, but it's like, it kind of brings your mojo down. It brings your like motivation a little bit out of whack because you're like, oh man. And then it just year after year, you're just playing a game. And at least now you can, if you get what you want and, have that ratio, it's going to help. But I believe like, man, if I had a morph or something like that, I would do it the style I do it, man. I think, having like a cage set up with like a real hot spot and like a nice cool spot and try to I think it's more helpful to understand like the timing and follicular growth. I think like Al, Ron, and Heather and Manny are doing so good outside is those temperature changes and fluxes and outdoor kind of climate really plays a big role in getting good success. I mean that's how I've done it. I kind of taught myself with that one. I understood that, especially like with Blotched or with all of them, understanding that you got to have a real hot spot, but understanding that they got to be able to cool down as well. Sometimes just warm enough isn't good enough because you're having them being out there too long and it messes with development. If they're out in the wild, they're basking. They're getting so warmed up that they're thermoregulating and they pull back and, they hold temperature really well. I've seen it where like, I have my basking like 105, 110 and they're there for, not crazy long like they would if you just had it warm enough. And then they pull away and they're like 88 degrees for hours away from the heat. And I think that because they're their own incubator, it benefits, understanding how cool side plays a big role just as good as like a real hot side.
No, anytime you have a live bearing species, there's just so much more you have to focus on. I started with boas, then I did a lot of blue tongue skinks, and those have been pretty much my 2 live bears, I guess, since I've been in the hobby. Everything else was eggs, but eggs scared the fuck out of me in the beginning. Like I felt more confident about a boa than getting a ball python egg. And then I hatched out thousands of ball pythons and just realized how fucking easy it was and how easy and simple. But then, I get recorrected when I fuck up my Woma eggs, which I'm never going to do again. I think we have 6 ovulations on our Woma so far. We'll have a 7th probably in the next couple of days. I'm going to have a great success rate this year.
Now, I'm pretty sure, I think a lot of like snake stuff, I'm not like crazy familiar, but is it because like the Woma and blackheads, they need a little diapause at the end where they need a little cooling temperature instead of too warm?
So I think there is some truth there, but what I find like living in the climate I'm at right now, and I always have different species in the same environment. The boas and the Australian pythons, I would say, would just be against an outer wall. Like their heat is at the back, but there still is almost like I said, you can feel the cold radiating through the wall. When I do that, I tend to have more successful years. Um, my blackheads this year, I want to say the pair is like 7 or 8 years old now, a pair of Xanthics. And come December, because in our heads, we had to do the whole cooling process. We didn't quite do it yet. I didn't even think to add the male. Put the ultrasound on her. I think December 20th, she was at 21 millimeters. So I was like, oh man, it's already happening. Got the male in, got a lot, gave her a couple meals. 30 days later, she was at 25 millimeters. They looked a little cloudy. I checked today, 6 millimeters reabsorbed. So now I don't know if that was the cooling process. I don't know if that's because I kind of went into it, in my opinion, a little unprepared. I plan on doing an upgrade on caging going into this year, and the cages kind of came in at the very edge when breeding season started. So I left them in the previous thing. So there was a little bit of, let's say this, it didn't affect the Woomas any. Pretty much went 9 for 7 on the Woomas, and the 2 that didn't breed were the youngest ones that we tried this year. But the blackheads in the same rack, like I said, it could be so many reasons. I think I just have a better idea what her time frame is, and next year I'll appropriately feed and pair around that, I guess.
Yeah, so I mean, and the thing is too is like, in my opinion, like if you get it right, it actually isn't that hard. It actually is. It's easier. Once your parameters are like where you have the success I have is like if you can make yourself hands off, it is easy. If you're giving them everything they want and need, because they are they are the maternal incubator. You give them everything they want and need. It actually is almost like kind of easy peasy because they're doing what they need. They're thermoregulating properly. They're moving around. Again, that's the attention to detail that I see is their routine. They all have a routine. They're all doing something. They're all like, I go in and I know what she's doing. It's like I even call it like when they're like they do this, they rotate, and I'm like, it's like a rotisserie chicken. They're basically cooking each side and then pulling back. They got the job done. They go and thermoregulate. You go into a cooler area. But what happens if you do everything they want and need? Let them be. It's easy. You don't have to do nothing because. And then what happens is even better when the parameters are right. Those babies come out vigorous, large, especially live bearing to eggs. Sometimes that's where the downside of eggs are because unless the snake or reptile is, maternally incubating them, they come out a little smaller and a little bit weak. Whereas the live bearing, if your parameters are right, these babies come out robust and big and ready to go. And they're actually easy. And especially, skinks, if they come out like a nice size, you throw that plate right down, they're eating it. By the next 2-3 days, they're like twice the size of what they were. And that's what it is. If you can understand parameters, obviously nothing's always perfect, but it is, if you get it perfect, it's a little easier on yourself. That's how I look at it. What happens is when you play this, and I've learned early on, is you start to play this guessing game. Well, I did this wrong. And if you don't fine tune it right, like a guitar, it starts to go out of whack. And that's when you start to have, a lot of, problems. But once you kind of fine tune it, and you understand what it takes and what, giving them what they want and need, you'd be surprised that it starts to become not so hard at all.
No,
that's what I've noticed.
I find this, of course, gets easier over time. And even like I said, just the body language of your skinks compared to the way I bred them 13 years ago, the way I'm breeding them now. And like you said, certain parameters, it was so much different breeding in the north because I had a true shutdown on my animals. Like I brought them in my bedroom, cracked the window, and it was like 55, 60 degrees in there at night. I woke them up when it was time. Where now, I haven't had that true shutdown, honestly, in almost 7 years. Not being in Buffalo anymore. But that's success. So, just kind of adapt to whatever your environment is.
That's what I say. Like everyone goes, how are you breeding? And I'm like, honest with you, I look at the guys that are breeding closer to the equator. Like, how do you breed them? Because you know, if the temperature is almost the same all the time, yes, there's understanding of like things that can make a switch on, but like close to the equator, like you can have a female like ready to go, and like you have no clue because you kind of kept them the same. Obviously, there's techniques and ways, but like on my side, like I have the routine where I understand, and like you said, like you know, when you're in Buffalo, like you're cooling them, you're in control. You know, like you're bringing it up slowly. They're starting to develop their follicles. Males are starting to get going, and then it's pretty much straightforward. But when you're like close to the equator, like some of those Indonesian species, like you know, there's a little bit more, you know, finesse to it, in my opinion.
So, and what an advantage, like you said, the guys in Florida are, because these outdoor enclosures, year round together,
Yeah,
communal, like when the window's there, they're going to do it. Like you don't have to catch it.
hands off.
I
That's basically
wish.
what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Someday, like I said, I would love to do some kind of greenhouse. Like I would like to start a little piggy bank when the skinks make a little money. I just keep putting it in there so they can afford their own house kind of thing. I've
yeah,
done that in the past. I'll be honest, like, when the skink market really blew up like a decade ago, the very first thing we did is we went out and probably spent about almost $8,000 to $10,000 on new caging. Like we did that well that year. It was like, let's put it all back in and improve it on the way we're doing things. And I've kind of always been that way. Like you know, any type of species does well, I tend to keep on upgrading the way I do them. And I've always done that. And the upgrade isn't always just going out and getting a new animal. Most of the time, it's equipment.
yeah, yep. Yeah, it's tough. It's not easy, and like, you know, when you have like a breeding program, it isn't always easy. And then the big thing is space. You know, it's not. You know, there should be a standard, but there's an unnecessary. You know, there is an unnecessary understanding that you can't be always perfect, and you know when you start to have these giant enclosures and it starts to take up a lot of space too. And sometimes, like snake species and stuff like that do better in racks, so it's hard to even judge at all, in my opinion.
So, it's kind of like, so if you're saying there's our standard, and then, the other way I put it is there's the animal standard. And like you said, in the wild, it's so much more rough on them. Sometimes this minimalist setup that we do here, yes, you're successful, but it's just a little better than it is outside in a sense, in certain ways, with the accommodation, something always being there for them, weekly meals on schedule every Tuesday at 3 o'clock kind of shit. But like after a while, you kind of find other ways to do it, ways that make you more comfortable, make you more happy about the way you're doing it. Like I said, the way we did things in the past on certain things were kind of crazy compared to the way we do them now.
Yeah, that's where I feel like we should stop. People got to stop knocking on the hobby. I think we're going in a better direction than we did. So, I think that we need to start. Oh, there just needs to be some type of correlation. I feel like there's too many groups like against each other when, like, in a sense, like, we have more in common than the guy that wants to run over a snake on the road. Like, we should be getting mad at those guys. Not so mad at the people that, yeah, we're not perfect. Not everyone's perfect, but we have some type of a high percentage of us have a good meaning towards the animals. And again, we're not perfect, but guess what? The wild ain't perfect either. So, like, I think
So
there's just
I don't read the comments, man. Maybe you can read a comment, but I'll be honest with you, and maybe the guy's listening, he's the one who broke me, but I set up a brand new wall unit of like animal plastics, white 4-foot cages. I think there was like 20 of them. And I laid down like perfect white paper towels, hide boxes, big water bowl, added a couple things, set up all the animals and took a picture of it. And the very first comment was, "You're a real piece of shit for keeping those animals like that." I've never read a comment since. It broke me. I said, "Fuck it. I don't even care what people think."
well, and I'll be honest with you, I am in that stage, but I play the in between where I feel that we do need to address those things because, like, we do have to have an understanding because, I feel that there is a way we do need a defense. We do need to like say, hey, like, otherwise, if we're not talking about it, oh, screw those guys. Well, these guys start to make laws, and if we have an understanding that there are good people out there. We do need to talk about it. Stop knocking and talking negative all the time. So yes, I don't. Maybe sometimes I look at the comments, but I look at it in the comments as a protection mode. That I feel like sometimes it's good to talk about it because you know, I just think that we should come together in a sense than always just be like how you kind of took it, and you could just say, yeah, forget about those guys. But, we can all try to find some type of alliance in the hobby with, I think more zoos need to come on board and understand, how important that there are good people in the private sector, there's people that should only be out in the wild that should have an understanding because, yeah, there's no such thing as conservation, but like you have to have an understanding what the future brings. There might not be any conservation. The forest might be gone in 100 years. So we need to understand what preservation does as well. Look at the thylacine. The thylacine would be around if we preserved that animal. We took away everything. We killed them all, and now they're gone forever. So like people just, I think in my head, I'm like, there needs to be an alliance and an understanding than just saying, screw them. I don't want to, we don't even pay attention to them. But maybe in a sense, there needs to be a pay attention to because there needs to be like, we do share common values and there's too many enemies that share the same common value that we do love animals, there's people that are like in our area that like, they don't like the things we do, but like we are the same. We love animals, and sometimes I wish, there needs to be a better direction in that, in my opinion. Hopefully that's a part of the new standard, in my opinion. Like we want better for the reptiles and it's going in the right direction, but I think there needs to be an alliance with other people like zoos, conservation people. Because if we can correlate, we do play a role together, and I hope that does happen one day. It kind of, honestly, it pisses me off. I think it's stupid that we all have like this little like clique and like they're on this side and that side. I think there needs to be some type of, opening of doors because we can really create something.
So I'm sure Dennis McNamara is listening to this, but I feel that the zoo community looks at us kind of like white trash because at one point we were white trash. I don't think we're white trash anymore. I think we're a little more middle class compared to where we used to be. But like, I can understand and like, I've heard stories of zoos when animals would accidentally breed, they would just euthanize the babies. Like, it seems the breeding aspect, they want a little more control over it, I guess you could say. But I do think, I love the idea of conservation. I've even talked to like Jeff Galewood a little bit about even in certain areas where like, like we talk about how in Missouri, there's like 200 acres for Plains hognose. Like it'd be cool if you could start buying up the farmland around it and just kind of letting it grow out again. Like little things like that. Maybe that 200 could be 400 acres. Maybe it's
that
not
would be cool.
But still something.
And that plays a big role too, is preserving land. And I think it's unfortunate, with the capitalist country and, a lot of developers and, it's tough. It's tough. And money plays a role too. So we'll see. I just feel like I hope, we all somewhat, can be a part of each other. And there's no knock on I'm not trying to knock on anybody because there are great zoo people out there. There are great, the conservation people that understand that what the private sector does. And I understand what the zoo does and conservation. Sometimes I just wish, I think we are better in unity than, the developer that wants to destroy all land possible,
Yeah, no.
For a buck.
Yeah, I don't really know how we got here either, man, because I was just saying some dipshit made a comment on Instagram, but I agree with everything you just said for the record.
I know, I went on a side rant.
Yeah, no, I like I said, I feel like the hobby is always improving. I think sometimes it's self-improvement, and then I think sometimes it's just the image we want to portray to people. Like I said, a hobby has come so far. The venues that we're having shows in are better. I mean, I remember shit in the Northeast. I don't know if it was Pittsburgh, but like it was dirt. You were like in like a barn almost for a reptile show. Like it was the craziest shit ever. So like, we are improving every day. Our caging's getting better. I always talk about like I like what Vision's doing. I like how they're creating systems you can put lights on so you can do more lizard species. Like, like I said, I think there's a lot of things in the right direction. Diet, like I think the hobby's kind of, the best it's ever been right now.
I agree.
And, the regulations and laws and all that, like we were kind of talking about on the side, like, so here's the thing. I know we talked about it in the with Manny and Alex, but the New Jersey stuff going on. Is it appropriate to talk about that? Because I don't think a lot of people are aware of it if you're not in New Jersey.
Yeah, so I mean, this is, I mean, you know, I'll talk
How
about
about this? Just what are they putting in place? And like talk about like requirements, not feelings, just what's happening.
I mean, there's a little feelings. I mean, it's so basically in New Jersey, in order to sell reptiles, you have to have like a permit or licensing. Basically, Fish and Wildlife in the state of New Jersey, we have to fill out like everything possible, everything we have, all species we have, all species were acquired with like receipts and even to the point where like what died like in this year, everything possible. And we've been doing that for a long time. And recently, and I'll be honest with you, like New Jersey fish. Oh, hold on, my headphones are dying.
You're okay.
I don't think so. Hold on.
No, that works.
Oh, you there?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, yeah, because I didn't hear you. So, basically, New Jersey Fish and Wildlife was actually kind of having our back in a sense. It just wasn't the best prepared. So, basically, we got an email like a couple months ago, and like it was basically like we got warning, and like it was like almost like a new law made where we have to make our health department. And then once I heard this word, in our municipal, like where we are in our township, we have to make them aware, and they need to know what we have. And all we need to do is get a letter in writing that we have to let New Jersey Fish and Wildlife know that, they're aware of that I have animals, any breeder. But the thing is that they didn't, attest to is, and again, the reason why they were having our back was because apparently two people under our licensing were doing things not right and got caught by the health department and like basically got shut down. And I think New Jersey Fish and Wildlife were warned. So basically they let us know, which they're kind of having our back. But what they didn't know is the crap storm that comes when you start to deal with municipal. And then when they hear the word reptile, it's game over. So I knew right away when they said we have to let our municipal know, I knew we were in trouble. So basically the reason why is, so I went to my health department. The supervisor there said, basically, they were like, I told them like, all I need is like a written letter that you guys are aware. And I said to them, I'm like, you're more than welcome to come here and check it out. That's fine with me. I want to be open. I don't mind it. Like, I get it. So he looked at my address and he goes, well, you're zoned R30. We can't even touch you. You're residential property. You have to be zoned for this specific. Once I heard that, I knew it was done because that means that I have to go to zoning in the township. Yeah. So basically I went to my zoning and they basically like in a sense laughed in my face. One of the guys was like, oh, the last guy that was here, we chased him out of town. Like that was doing that. But he didn't know who I was. So like, I think maybe that person wasn't doing something right. Yeah. So, but the thing is that I don't, so basically it's because, the licensing says pet shop on it. They're like, it's stuck in the Stone Age. It wasn't changed to just like, hobbyist or, basically it's stating that I'm a pet shop, but I'm not. I don't sell in my house. I sell everything I sell. I drop off at FedEx via Morph Market or International, but they see the word pet shop and it's like, yo, you can't do that. And I understand that. So like if that license was just categorized a little bit, so that means that everybody in New Jersey is in trouble right now. So basically, I went to my township and I explained to them, like, I don't sell out of my house. I'm not a pet shop at all. Actually, in a sense, yes, I sell, but even back then it's more or less like, my passion, my hobby. And then I so happens to sell animals, but I don't sell them out of my house. Yeah, I use it via Morph Market. I explained that, but they never wrote back to me. So I had to wind up right now I'm getting a lawyer, and I got to start going down that path to get this done. I want to make sure I'm doing this right. I don't want to do anything wrong. I want to do anything legal, but it's so sad, and even some of like the regulations, like because it's stuck in a pet shop,
the regulations of the health department's like, you need a separate septic for these animals, or you need a quarantine room with a certain ventilation system, or you need a bathroom for like employees. But like, I don't have employees. Like I'm not a pet store, So there's just so many things that are out of whack right now. And I think it'll hopefully fix itself, but I think it does need fixing because it's not fair to people. Think about it. So a person that literally has, so everyone has to have something in New Jersey, like a hobbyist permit. But if you're selling anything, you need to have that seller's permit. But so now you got a guy that literally breeds like what, 3 projects, and he has to do that. Like he does, which he does. He has to do that.
Yeah.
But like he literally sells 2 animals a year, and that doesn't matter. That's basically, you have to get rezoned. You're not allowed to sell out of your house, no matter what. So like even me going to FedEx, I don't sell out of my own address. Trust me, I don't want anybody. I don't want much anybody coming here. So basically, yeah, and even that, I tell them that it doesn't matter. To them, that's what they look at it, and understandable. I don't blame them. New Jersey Fish and Wildlife wrote pet shop license because it's just stuck in the past. Because back then, it isn't like now. There's no social media. There's no like morph market back then. They just never changed the title. So everybody's going through this right now. I mean, obviously, there's some oddball people that maybe know like someone in the township that kind of, it's as simple as writing a letter, just a letterhead. Hey, yeah, we know John has reptiles. That's it. Then I could get my license. But again, I will have to say this because I want to make sure of this. New Jersey Fish and Wildlife, they are very accommodating. They're giving me extension. They're doing all the right things. They kind of have my back. They understand. They understand that I got to go through these extremes. So at least that, even though I could kind of claim hardship, but like this is my livelihood, in a sense. So like I should be able to do this. I know I'd have to go another lawyer route, but I got to give props a little bit, even though they weren't the best prepared, understanding, the crap storm that we were going to be dealing with. I knew it when I saw the word municipal, but they are giving extensions. They are kind of cooperating and not like harsh on us. So there is an understanding, and I got to give them props to that too. But I don't think it's right. We're in the land of the free here, and I pay my taxes. I pay for a license to sell, and like this is the hoops and bounds that you have to go through. It's like people need to make money in this economy right now, and to stop them from doing that, it just there should have been a better prepared way, like a temporary license, or hey, we probably know that you're probably going to be in some trouble, but a lot of people in the state of New Jersey are dealing with that right now. And it's funny, I could go like 30-40 minutes down the road in Pennsylvania, you can have a freaking cobra, 2 inches from your face. No problem.
It's wild, and the reality is laws are going to chase breeders around the country. I bring back the Lacey Act. I remember all the big constrictor guys all went to Texas because they had a good customer base there. They all showed up there, and it was too much competition. A lot of people found out that if they just, which by the way, can you hear me okay? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, no, because I was just charging. Yeah, I was just charging.
Can I tell you something I should have told you in the beginning of the episode?
What?
Your sound is dog shit with those headphones. You sound the best when they're not in.
Take it out. It's better.
Yeah, take them the fuck out. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Yes.
Yeah. I was like messaging Steve and MJ because with the headphones sometimes, and William.
Wait.
So
I got you.
When William Philippek comes on here, he always wears his headphones, and his volume just sounds like wop 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 the whole time. I should have said something earlier, but I was like, fuck it, I'll just do this. But yeah, headphones, man, never again.
All right. All right.
So
I mean, on my end, I hear it good. So, but here it's actually not. It's still good though. It's better than what you were just describing. So.
No, it's different. Go back and listen, and it's just something about headphones with StreamYard. It's a very inconsistent volume. Like it kind of goes in waves.
I have noticed that though when I watch some podcasts. So that's a good thought.
I got this deep voice again. I don't have to say "wop" a bunch of times. Like, thank you, man. But so I don't mind Fish and Wildlife at all. We've had them at our facility. Very polite. You know, opened probably more drawers than we had to, but happy to do it because we love showing the animals off. You know, I had FWC call me one time, which was the scariest thing ever. Whenever FWC calls you, because why is FWC calling me? And it was just informing me about a permit we need to ship into the state. Very polite guy, everything. You know, I'm a very polite person. You know, everyone has a job to do. I understand that. I understand there are some situations, and a lot of times it's just deep down frustration we might have. But, you know, I don't try to make people's jobs harder on them in hopes they're not going to make my job harder on me.
Well, and again, yeah, they're just doing their job, like you said, and you know, most of the time, from what I experience, you know, when you hear fish and wildlife, you get a little bit like, you know, but it's, you know, they're very cooperative, and I will give it to them. Actually, to be honest with you, which I knew was going to be the problem when I heard municipal, it's the township that's, you know, just kind of laughing. You know, they're not really, you know, so it's unfortunate, you know.
Yeah, like I said, I keep what I do quiet. You know, the touching buildings to my shop, no, my landlord knows, but like I don't run around my little town advertising it. You know, I'm sure if they walked in, it would probably blow them away the amount of animals we have in there. But I'll be honest, shit's perfect. Like opening up like every drawer almost every day, like so on top of things that like, you know, stop by whenever. Like just really confident in what we're doing, which is awesome. You know, that's the one thing I always tell people, like, the moment you can't keep up, you got too much. And I've had times in the hobby that generally we've had too much.
Yeah. That comes with experience too. You start to have an understanding of like, yeah, this just isn't, you shouldn't be doing it like this. And you know, that's where you need to have the discipline to say, you know what, let's start to move some of this. And, you know, I've you know, listen, I've been there and you start to go, all right, let's start to move some of this stuff. And it even feels better too, you know?
Always. Yeah. I'm actually going to do one more big downsize this year. Just, yeah, I've got all these awesome animals I've been holding back for the last like 5 to 7 years, and like just really slowly getting everything there. And because of that, a lot of the stuff I've been kind of working with for a while, it's just time to move on from. It's going to be a relief. I don't know what I'm going to do with all my spare time, but I'm definitely going to do one more big downsize this year. So, you know,
newsflash, it gets boring because even now with the Skinks being with winter, I'm like, I go, I always do this every year. I'm like, oh, I get like a little small break, and then like a week in the winter, I'm like, you know what, I'm bored. I just want to wake my Skinks up again, you know.
I'll be honest. You know, I'd probably just do podcasts more if I had more time. You know, to be honest with you, like, you know, I don't talk to people as much as I'd like to. So like a lot of times these are like those genuine conversations I get to have. And like, you know, when we were talking and you had mentioned like, you know, early in the season, it's a higher protein diet, later in the year, maybe more greens. You know, the reality is a lot of years my northerns slow down towards the end of the year. And I just keep on changing the like can of dog food and like still adding the veggies I would. But this year, honestly, when they get more picky, I'm going to go heavy veggie. See if that's just maybe what they're interested in.
Yeah, I mean, so basically, like, because where I'm at, there's a lot of farmland. So, like, I'll, like, you know, it's great because literally on my block, I have a farm and I just get, like, a bunch of, you know, homegrown vegetables and just kind of cut them up and you know, give it to them. Like, you know, bell peppers, green zucchini, yellow zucchini, tomatoes. Like, they love tomatoes. Bunch of mixed greens, a bunch of stuff I give them, and then when fall comes, I'll start giving them the fruits. So like apples, you know, peaches, you know, because that's that time of this year too, and they love it. You know, they love the sweet stuff. You know, you know that you mix that, you know, ripened banana. They love that. That's such an, especially for babies, it's so enticing. You know.
Yeah, I always tell people, like, when I break down diet, I'm always like, you know, 45% protein, 40% vegetable, 10% fruit. I'm all like, they're like a little kid. You give them too much sugar, they're going to eat it all. You always joke around like you bury the blueberries, they dig them out and eat them first sometimes.
True. They know their colors. They're very smart.
Oh, yeah.
They know what they want.
For the longest time, honestly, I didn't give them an option. I put peas, carrots, blueberries, squash, sweet potato all in the blender, chicken livers, chicken hearts, chicken gizzards, some beef liver, and then throw some dog food together, and they just have to eat a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
But I will say sometimes I go through all that trouble, and man, they would all just reject it. And it's a big waste. One of the ingredients had to be put in them off. And like you said, later in the season, I probably am going to focus more on vegetables. We have the option to garden. I mean, I got a big ass backyard. We could do whatever the hell we want in it. I think this year that might be the goal, is just grow everything we need for the fall and just kind of lean into that before we cool them down.
And it's organic too. That's what I love about it. It's like you don't have to worry about like going to the store or produce. It's like, you know where it came from. And I think that's what's great too. One thing that I love, because of the geckos I have here, and it helps with like picky babies or even some adults, or, I love this for, gravid females, especially like shinglebacks where they can't fit anymore. Is like I'll feed my geckos and save some of the Pangea or like Rapashi, and put it aside, and then when I make a food, I like to pour it on the top, and they love that. Or just pour it like in a deli cup lid for like the gravid shinglebacks, and they just lick from it. But it's a complete diet. So for babies, if I make like a mix with like say dog food and stuff, and they don't really eat it, putting that Pangea or Rapashi like over the top of it, they lick it, and then they love it so much they wind up grabbing it and eating it, and then they take that dog food or some of that protein that you use. It definitely benefits. I use that a lot.
No, I like other Rapashi. I like that they're actually grounding insects up in it. I think with
Yep.
a strawberry flavor, I'm sure would go really
Fruits
well.
and insects.
Yeah. Like I said, I gotta do a little more. Sometimes, I've always just kind of had this mindset: when animals slow down, they're meant to slow down, and I shouldn't be encouraging them to eat more. Like, I expect intermediate fasting with a lot of animals, so I don't start over changing the routine. I just assume we're all used to it. But like I said, I am gonna fuck around with some veggies some more, just because if that's what they want, and it's just, again, that dog food's turning them off late in the year, I just kind of want to see what they do with it.
Well, and like I'm a big believer in like the 2 seasons of like a little bit more food, and for various reasons. So like springtime, I like to feed a lot, like more for for males. I love to feed them like this, like when they're waking up before they're into their like hormonal change. I try to pound food on them, like whole prey items, like a full-blown mouse or a quail, because that once breeding comes, they don't eat. And like I'm a big believer in trying to get them going or fattened up really. And then the same for females, is they're going through gestation process. So I try to get in there a little bit more and get a little bit more food. And then on the downside, in fall, some of the females that are on the cusp of like they just had babies and they're not looking that great, I try to give them a little bit more food, just getting ready for winter. And then in between, I feed like once a week, man. Like that's it. I don't really go crazy.
Yeah, I'm like you, a little fast in the spring, when they come out, trying to get some food in them. Then after that, I usually space it out to about weekly. Sometimes I'll do different random things. Like I might just put some beef liver in someday with some of the females. Sometimes I'll do mice, hoppers or something like that after they've already bred. And then after that, it's a little more routine about the diet. It's always the same recipe. But no, like I said, I've tweaked things a little bit over the years, but like I said, my biggest mistake is sometimes I want to make things better, and the way I was doing it was just fine. And the more I tweak, the worse off I am. The more they're rejecting the diet that I'm offering them. Like sometimes simplifying these guys is just fine.
100%, 100%. I'm with you on that. I think sometimes too much or too much overthinking too can play a role. I've been there. Whereas like things that worked, you just kind of stick with it, and again you adjust, and they tell you'd be surprised. A lot of them kind of do have their own routines, and they kind of in a sense dictate to you, and then you kind of go off that.
Yeah, no, and like, and then when you talk to different breeders, like like I said, just certain things work for certain people. You're talking about like the Australian pythons, and like, did I drop the temperature? Did I this? Did I that? I'm like, no, I ultrasounded, and when this one was ready, it got a male, and that one was ready, it got a male, and that's just what works for me. Other people might do the whole cool down in the cycle to make it work, but I found it's just not always necessary. But, there's a million different ways to do it. I don't know if you follow ball pythons, but there's a breeder up in Canada that, like, shuts his heat off in his building for a few days every year. And I think it gets down into, like, the 50s or 60s, and that gets all his females in full swing. I would never do that. I don't think it's necessary, but it works for him.
Exactly. And I going back to your messaging, with the diapause thing, I was meaning with, like, because I know what Wumas and blackheads. I was saying because I misinterpreted, like, when they incubate eggs towards late term, if I'm not mistaken, if you keep the temperature late term, they don't pip out of the egg. Don't they need, like, a little diapause, a little, like, temperature, like, drop a little bit so they?
Not for you're talking incubating eggs right now, right?
Yeah, for blackheads and, like, wombats. I know you were talking about that. I meant to say eggs. That was what I meant.
Oh no, I thought you meant, like, a lot of people talk about temperature cycling for your Australian pythons. A lot of people say you got to cool them down before breeding them. That's kind of what I was getting at. But, like, with the incubator, to be honest with you, I've always just done 88 on about everything I put in there. When we did the walk-in incubator, we did bring it down to, like, 86, and that was just fine. With the Woma eggs, a lot of times it's humidity things. You get some condensation on the top, it drops on the eggs, you start getting instant molding.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the truth, the biggest thing is we just drown them out a lot of times. That, or you keep them too dry, and then you dry them out really fast. Woma eggs are not very difficult. I'll just say that everybody has their own technique that works. Other people's techniques do not work for me. With them, they're 100% success rate. With me, I must have fucked it up a little bit along the way. I've tried different other people's ways. I'm going back to the way I've always done it now. And the way I find out, and I talk about this all the time, is I'll get 3, 4, 5 clutches, and I'll let the first 2 or 3 crash because I'm doing it differently. And then the last couple clutches, I'll do it the way I always have, and it's perfect. And I don't know why I keep changing. It's such a dumb thing. But with the Womas, man, I don't know why. I keep on doing other people's methods, and I just can't get them to dial in for me.
Yeah, well, hopefully you get it to work, because they are pretty cool.
No, I'll hatch them out. We hatch them out every year, and I will have a much better success rate this year. And if I don't, I'll call myself out like I always do. But okay, so shingleback breeding, man, like, we talked about it a little bit, but in the hobby for years, everyone's all like, they bond for life. They travel miles in the wild in Australia to find their other. That's not true. When you went into skink breeding or with shingles, did you go in scared? Like, am I going to be able to do this? And it was easier than you thought? Or tell me a little bit about, like, the learning process there.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what it is. That's why the hobby is so great, because you have people that, kind of help you, So there's, like a buddy of mine named Paul. There's a buddy, my mentor, Dave Sutton. There's even a guy in Europe. His name's Menno. Like, these are questions that kind of give you, like, a little bit of, like, an understanding. And that's the sense of comfortableness. And then you bring in house and observe. Like, myself, I always say, like, you have mentors, but reptiles can be your mentor too. So, like, they teach me as well. So, they don't. I mean, listen, I don't know. In captivity is always different than in the wild. So I see compatibilities more than anything. You have certain animals that belong with each other. Like, there's certain temperaments on them that you feel can just, like, puzzle piece together and work. But I was never scared. No, I mean, I have all these mentors that kind of, basically made me feel comfortable. And then, they are actually calm and chill. Like, I have reverse trios. I have males that lay with each other and hang out. They don't care at all. But, there's some other males that won't get along. But reading your animals is very important. Like, I think that having a timid male with a vigorous female is just, you got to watch out for that. It's probably not going to work. Having a timid, kind of relaxed female with a timid, chill male is a better option. And having, a vigorous, very dominant male with a, high-strung female would probably be the better option. That's kind of how I go there. And then there's, I even make moves on the fly, like, I prepare that I have a little bit extra males, and I might do male swaps. I see, that's where the whole mate for life thing, where it kind of goes out the window because I do swap males. You know, I feel, you know, if this male's not doing the right thing, I'm going to take this male that I see running around in his pit or cage. You know, he's ready to go. Let's make the move. And, you know, a clear sign that your female's in her window, and you know this, and a lot of the, you know, skink people out there, you know, especially with shinglebacks, when you start rubbing the back of their tail, it starts to lift up. You know that they're pretty receptive. And, you know, if I see a male not doing his job or not really doing anything, and I see a male pacing around the cage, I'm going to switch it up. So, you know, and this year, because, you know, I guess the nervous part is because I want to go bigger with enclosures. I want to do bigger ratios than just a 1.1. So the new thing that made me a little nervous this year was putting trios together. And I did have success with that. I had a male breed 2 females and have a litter of both females. And that's the direction I want to go with that, because, you know, I'm not going to have these giant pits and just have a 1.1. I would like to have maybe a 1.2 or 1.3, and then have, you know, another male within that group that I can swap. You know, the only thing to worry about is if you have really vigorous males and nasty males, is like understanding that, you know, when you do swaps, you know, the scent of that male might be around that female. You have to watch that, because if he smells that other male and takes it out on that female in there, that could be a problem. But yeah, no, it's pretty simple. And again, they're very chill. They're like, to me, like I say this all the time. And actually it's funny. I heard some people tell me this, and I kind of always thought of this, is that they are Australia's land tortoise. There's no true land tortoise in Australia. And they remind me of one. They live long. They're very slow moving. They're very like blah. They're more veggie based type, you know, like it reminds me, you know, of a tortoise, you know, just no shell. Like they're non-evolutionary tortoise. They never got the shell. So, and they're chill like tortoises too, you know, like in my opinion. So, you know, so like, yeah, compared to some of the other Taliqua, they're very cool. Like they can lay with each other. They hang out. Sometimes if I have 3, they're all laying with each other. You know, like it's not bad. You just have to know the temperaments of each. That's what it is. Some they all are their own individuals.
So, you know, when you do Ractodactylus, you kind of graduate up. You know, maybe you come in with cresteds, and then maybe you go to gargoyles, then you go to chihuahuas, and then you get to the leechies, and then you get real anal about what leechies you're buying for what locality kind of stuff. I feel that's the way that skinks are. You slowly graduate up. But I will say, shingles have always been so far out of my price range, because I know the moment I buy a pair, I'll keep every baby I ever produce. Like
It's so true.
So.
Yeah, dude, I get I mean, it's my own fault. I mean, but I get a ton of messages, and I try to be very polite. Like, you know, some people don't realize, but like they only produce 1 or 2 babies. So it's going to be a long time until, you know, I start releasing a bunch. And again, even that, it's like, I want to make sure these guys go in the right hands too. Like I want, you know, these are amazing creatures. And, you know, you want to talk about the ultimate pet, like just amazing. But, and again, too, even with that price range, it's like, it is tough. Like I will sell them at the price I sell them for, because that's what I paid for. And like, to be honest with you, I have no gains with this. Like, and anyone tell you like making money with shinglebacks is, you know, that's not realistic. And that wasn't my plan. It wasn't about the money. It was, you know, how awesome these are. And I want to play a role in trying to establish them. But, you know, in a sense, it's tough to like, well, first off, there is people that will pay for them, but it's like for like the whole like business side of it, like it's not ideal, because you're going to spend top dollar on animals that maybe produce 1 or 2 babies, and like you said, you're going to want to keep them all, because when you see a baby born, it's literally like the cutest little nugget you'll ever see. Like it's insane how cute they are, and like the maternal instincts too. Like I can't believe I'll have groups together and they know who mom is. Like I'll like walk in at night and just see them tucked under their mom, like little balls of like, you know, a little loaf of bread just laying under their mom. Like, and it's so interesting. But, you know, moms protect, and it's, to be honest with you, like, I'm like I get emotional, but like that stuff makes me like emotional. Like I got in a weird way, like when you see babies born, you get like that weak in the knees type of thing. Like, and like just seeing that, like, and it feels so like you feel so accomplished. And, you know, even mom kind of teaches them how to eat. Like not how to eat, like, you know, physically, but like kind of draws them into the food and they feel comfortable with mom. You know, so like I'll step away and like mom will take the step to the food and then they kind of follow with her and almost like she's leading them to them, like teaching them in a sense. Like all that stuff like gets you going, you know. It's a great feeling. But yeah, most of the time they only have one. Like each year I've been breeding them, it's been 50-50. Like 50% litters of just one and 50% of litters of two. I have never got 3 babies yet, which it happens.
I've heard of 3. I think
Yeah.
we know somebody who might have had 3 one time, if I remember right. Yeah, no, it's you know, I like communal species like garter snakes where they all huddle around the food
Yeah.
dish. You know, and I can't remember his name. I feel like a real piece of shit, but the monkey tail skink breeder that me and Alex talked to, it might have been
Oh, the guy in California, I think, right?
can't remember his name though. I don't know. It's a simple name too.
Yeah,
But
I know his name. I know who you're talking about. I forgot his name, but he has messaged me before. But he breeds them really pretty consistently too.
yeah, and you know, when he was talking about body language with them, he says that like he knows when there's a baby in the cage, the way the adults are acting when he's approaching the cage. Like they seem more defensive, like really love that. And I think he also discussed how like, you know, a lot of these family trees truly live in one tree. Like, and that's it. They just have this one tree. This family monopolizes generation after generation.
Yeah.
No, it's like I said, shingles are kind of like the holy grail if you're a skink breeder. You know, as long as
I think from what I'm seeing, it's like the holy grail for like the reptile community. Like a lot of people that they like, if they were to have, like, even Gary Shavino says that, like, if I were to have one reptile, it would be Shingleback, and a lot of people are like that.
well, does he own Bolin's?
Yeah, he has Bolin's.
Well,
Yeah,
that's why he said that instead of you know, he has Bolin's, so that's kind of the iconic thing. Shinglebacks might be number 2.
yeah,
He's already got number 1. But no, Shinglebacks have an iconic look to them. Like it's something that like people know what that is. And there's a few reptiles like that, like snapping turtles. I just always remember snapping turtle pictures growing up. You know, garter snakes are very like people just know what they're looking at, and you know, for overseas stuff, Shinglebacks are pretty high in my opinion.
yeah. Well, you got
choices.
Well, and then you got cataphractus and the sun gazers. A lot of people are like, you know, that's those, you know, those South African species. That those are like what people, you know, like something unique or different, you know.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, and I know they've probably gone for more money here and there, but like every Shingleback in the last 15 or 20 years has been $10,000. I don't think, and I'm sure there's some that are a little more, of course, but like it's always just been like if they're even available, expect to pay that. And to be honest with you, it's gonna be one of those things that stays there for a long time. Like Bolin's pythons, it's gonna be up for a long time. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. My phone's like dying, so I'm putting in a charger.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, you're fine, man. Usually we go 2 hours and quit, but we're rolling a little long. Well, I wouldn't call it long. We're still going.
You're still.
But no, like I said, at some point I will own a shingle, and then of course it'll have to be 2 shingles. But man, I'll be honest, like it's kind of like having the money to buy like that car you want for no reason just because you want to have it, or a motorcycle. Like it's truly going to be like you said, it's like a hobby. It's not a business buy. Like it's going to be something you simply want to have.
Yeah, by the time I make my money back on all this, like I'll be retired. Like, cause I haven't. I bought a bunch and like paid insane amount of money, but like I didn't do it for the money. You know, I did it to follow after what I see, and like then now I'm gonna have to I'm building a facility strictly for them. So you want to talk about even losing more money? This building's gonna cost like 100,000 plus, maybe more, like 200 grand. So where am I making money in that? You know, but like it's not about that. I see it, I enjoy it. To me, like in life, like, you know, finding something like you really love is more important, and then the money will follow. You know, that's how I look at it. Like I'm enjoying this, and The geckos really help with that, like keeping me going, and I do, I love that helps that, but it's definitely not a moneymaker, but I do believe that I hope I am playing a decent role in it. I know people probably won't be so happy, and saying the money part of it, but at the same time, I did spend that money too. So like but
I wouldn't
hopefully in the
apologize
end,
about a thing like that, man. Like I said, 20 years I've been looking at shingles. They've always been the same price. Like it's just, it is what it is. There's certain things that people buy in high, and I expect them to stay high. Like you said, availability alone is never going to be there. Yeah, I'm never ashamed about investing in something like that, even if it's just knowing it's going to be like a personal thing. But again, like I said, it's not for everybody because there's a lot of things that have always been out of my price range. But when I save the money, I'm going to buy a shingle. Hopefully you sell one someday, though.
I will. I'm just trying my best to establish and like get my pairings right, and then building this facility. If I can get it done, I think it's going to really push that because now I'll have more space and an opportunity to have an establishment here, and then after that I'll be able to probably sell most like a fair amount, like more percentage than not. But it is tough because they're amazing. But I do believe that there's going to come a time where I feel good that I produce a fair amount that I think I'd be able to help people out and do what I can.
So, we're not going to say any numbers except for this one. How many shingles is too many shingles?
That's a good question. I don't know. A good amount. Hey, why don't you come? You should come over one time and you'll see, and then I'll tell you it's not enough.
I'll definitely visit, and I'll probably agree with you. You could have more. And like you said,
I mean, my thing is what I want to do is as much as I really can, because you can't really get them. It was what I bought in the United States. Most of my collection came from somebody who's bred them in the United States. But my biggest goal is to just have that variety. Having the Aspera, the Western, some of the Westerns forms, and at least having all that established in decent groups, so that I can get them out to people and do the right thing. But again, I want them in the right hands too, and you'll know, and if you ever come and see, and if you have them yourself, like they're different. They're like very pet. Like I feel like anybody out there that if they truly love reptiles and they had a litter, like you're not selling your first babies, man. It's just impossible. Like it's not. They're like little baby like nuggets. They're like just so cute. Like they're awesome.
yeah, love the pictures. So with there are a few other people in the country that have had success. I know you guys all communicate together. Are you swapping any babies to kind of diversify what you're doing a little bit? Maybe swapping like bloodlines or anything like that?
Well, the people I talk to, I definitely want to. That's a conversation needed, and absolutely. So that's the other part. Is like I would rather not sell as many. I'd rather swap bloodlines to really strengthen genetics than sell them. So like, there's another factor that, I'm not sitting here making a lot of money. I've spent more. So, but again, it's not about the money. It's about doing the best I can for them. When I retire and I probably won't, I'll be too old. At least I know that I did play somewhat of a role in establishing them, and I think that's what I want. And so basically, yes, I would like to, some of those people, I would definitely like to do some swaps for sure.
Yeah, like I totally understand wanting to keep everything you produce and have those numbers. I'd be, like I said, the exact same way. I did that for years, even with just the Northerns. Like I said, I think the group was like 27, and at one point it got up to 250. So, and it happened fast. And a lot of that was just holding back. Occasionally picking up stuff from people we liked, but like there just wasn't ever enough. And there was just we liked every one of them. I wouldn't say it was too big because we took care of them, but having it where I'm at around 80 now, I like that 80 number. I think it's an easy number. I can never overproduce. I feel great about the number.
So that's a great point. So like, that's another reason why I love Shingleback so much, because it's not you have an understanding of what you're getting, and it's not overwhelming. They only produce 1 or 2 babies, so it's like you could take it easy. It's not this like, and then you have to worry about the business aspect. It's all there's going to be demand forever, and like and that's where I say to myself like, there's demand forever. There's not much being born, so there's a patience level. There's a not overwhelming, a lot of work that needs to be done. I'm not producing a lot, so it's like, and I think even in 5 to 10 years it'll still be maintainable. So that's what I like about it too, is like I'm not in this feeling of like, oh, the market, I don't want to worry about that. That's what I love about it too, is like I don't have to worry about that. I don't need to. I take it, I work with them, I try to create, and I'm at my own pace.
So there are certain parts of my collection that, pay for the other parts of the collection. Like I said, like, what they make is typically what I'll put back into them in certain areas. But, there's a reality, like my boas do a lot of my heavy lifting to where when I have a bad skink year, I don't really worry about it. Because, they're picking up the slack kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, like you said, having a species like that where you're not dependent on it paying a bill, you just get to appreciate it, expand on it as you have the opportunity to expand. Totally understand that. So is it okay for them to breed every year, or are you separating males out certain years so they're only going every other year?
I mean, it's more so females that you want to give breaks.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Taking the male out of the group, or I take it like if you just put a female individually then, or do you have like a group of girls you put together if they're not breeding?
Yeah, so just basically each year I play it by ear. Like if a female produces 2 litters in a row, she's getting a break. And like basically I have females that are that took a break this past year that I'm gonna pop back out into the groups. So basically, and then also you might have a female that had 1 litter and but looks like crap, and I'm like, you know what, it'd be a really dumb move to breed her again. Let's make a good executive decision and give her a rest. And that's just kind of how I go. I play it by ear. And then also usually females that have 2 litters in a row, I try to give her a rest. But then there's some females that just look so good like they could go again, but sometimes I try to keep it disciplined and not overdo it. It's not worth it. And they're in captivity and they go through a lot. It's not like like northerns or so even though they have like some decent sized litters, like these girls go through it. It's bad. Like those babies I can't believe how big they are when they're born. It's insane.
Yeah, they're monsters, man. Like I'm always blown away when you see even 2 of them next to the mom. Like it's almost like an equal amount of body weight between those 2 babies and her. It's incredible they can even pass those things.
Yeah, I have a video on my Instagram. Like you could so many people are like, I can't believe how big that baby is. Like I had a baby born this year, right out. The baby was 160 grams. That's nuts. that's like huge.
Yeah,
I have subadult leechies at that size.
True.
Yeah.
So, I kind of go back to saying that I always was under the impression that it was hard to breed this species. What do you think's the true trigger that's getting in there? Do you think it's this gradual like warm up, just communal, and that's getting you there?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, having the ratios, I think, understanding where your animals, some people didn't know where their animals came from. Like these are all captive bred. Most of like everything I have is born in the United States. So, we know what's going on there. We know the sexes. Some people never really knew the sexes of animals. And then understanding that they need a cool down, and they don't need a fast. You can't warm them up too fast. You got to realize these Shinglebacks are producing really big babies, and their follicles need a process, and you got to do it slow. You can't rush it, and I think that plays a big role. And yeah, letting them be, and just understanding, those pairs. Understanding, what your go-to males are, and that's what I do here. I have some males that I maybe not like too much, and leave them on the back burner, but you have your stud males, you have your studs and duds, and being attuned to your collection, I think is so key. And then even like just understanding what it takes. Like even during breeding season, there's like a month of breeding. Like I have a bunch of cork bark all over the place and there's obstacles everywhere. These guys are like clumsy. So I'll remove, like during the day, I remove all cork so that they literally have just one flat surface to breed on, and sometimes you miss your locks if you have all this stuff in the way. And shinglebacks are clumsy and very large body mass that it takes a lot. So if there's something in their way and they miss a lock, like your year could be done. So again, that's a number on the roulette table that you need to increase your odds, and that's a piece that I will play. I will make sure that everything I need is going to be there for me. But yeah, dude, anybody could do this. Yeah, like if you got a pair from me, a right pair from me, you're going to get success. I'm going to do my best to set you up. And that's the thing, it's something we talked about. And I watched your podcast, and I really truly agree with that. Like setting people up for success is better than failure, because then they feel like they don't want to be a part of it. Like you want them to, be set up for success and have that opportunity to do something good, because they're going to tell 10 other people like, yo, this is great. Like, I think that, teaching people's good. Like some people are like, you might have somebody like, oh, why do you like kind of teach your tricks and this and that? But like, I don't mind it, because I know I'm setting them up for success, and they're gonna want to be a part of it, and they're gonna want to buy from me or buy from another breeder, and so.
Yeah, like I said, I like seeing people succeed. Like I said, I live vicariously through their success. And I remember coming in the hobby, like, there wasn't always a lot of people out there trying to give you good advice. A lot of people kept it a little closer to the heart because, the hobby was still kind of new back then, and even they were figuring it out. They didn't just want to give it away for free, I guess is the way of putting it. But no, yeah, like you said, it's, you hear me, man. People are going to fail on their own. Like, you might as well help them out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and for instance, like, let's use, like, MJ, for example, like, and, like, having Bill Stiegel and all these guys talk about green trees, like, it's blown up because we're setting them up for success. And green tree pythons have been, like, the thing right now, because, there's understanding of, like, the things and tools you need. And what happens is you want more people to be on board than hearing, like, back then, oh, my green tree pythons always die and this and that. And it's like some people kind of get discouraged by that. And I think it's cool to talk about it, and people want to be a part of it,
No, for sure. And, so my buddy Chad Halker just got his first clutch of green tree pythons. His female gave him 14 eggs. He's been obsessing over every single podcast that MJ does, talking about anything green tree python related. Like, he's really, truly studying it because he doesn't want to fail. And like you said, MJ's coming out, like, he struggled his first couple years. It's a difficult species. And then he knocked it out of the fucking park this past year.
Yep.
It's just, you put the time into things, you can be successful, and then it's easy. But
Yep.
you just have to find the way that works for you.
Yeah, and have good people around you as well. If, like we were talking about, like, like there's people back then, they didn't want to share anything, but then what happens is you fail and keep failing, and then you're done, whereas you have some people around you and talk about it, you start to see the successes, and then people see your success and want to be a part of it. So I think it plays a role. It does.
No. And like I said, certain things, like I said, it's just simply paying attention to your animals. Like you said, when you learn that body language, like every year things just get a little easier. And a lot of patterns and a lot of different things, like snake related, a lot of them do the same stuff when they're building follicles. Like once you figure out, like I said, training wheels is ball pythons, buddy. Any asshole could breed a ball python. If you're struggling with ball pythons, get the fuck out of the hobby. Like, you're not good at anything else we're doing, man. And I always talk about the eggs. You can hatch those eggs on anything. Like, I've used right now, literally, I hatch my eggs on cypress mulch. I grab a handful of cypress mulch, I throw it in a container, I put the eggs in there. Perfect babies every single time. I used to do vermiculite and perlite and mix it all nice and just enough water and clump it with 1 drop of water. Bullshit, buddy. Cypress mulch, they hatch every time. Like I said, it's a very easy species. It's very hard to mess something up if your settings are right. There's settings you can mess up, but like I said, it's an easy entry level species. You'll learn a little bit in the process, and you can kind of take that into something else.
Yep. And going back, like there was a time where people didn't know how to do things with ball pythons until those successors came. Because there was time back then people didn't even know how to do that. But now you start to have your trial and error and success, and it starts to kind of, go in the right direction. Now I'm not 100% sure, but I wouldn't doubt there was a time where people didn't know anything about ball pythons, and it was like hard to breed, or trying to figure them out to hatch the eggs or.
No, so the Frida, the big vision cages, the gray ones.
Yeah.
Like, I remember like the Tracy Barker video, like she had like her first freedom breeder Rex come in, but like, they were keeping single ball pythons in these like 4-foot cages. I had a conversation with Graziani where the first pastel ball python, he raised them for 6 years before he bred them, where now people are breeding at 6 months old.
Yeah.
Not that I always encourage that. I mean, it's possible, but but no, like you said in the beginning, I'm sure it was a little tricky, but man, it's very easy, especially like with the eggs. Like, there's so many touchy species with eggs. Like, I could probably think of 10 different things I've like hatched a ball python egg over, different temperatures, like even get a little water on top. There's just a lot of room for air with that species, I guess, the way I put it.
Yeah, and I feel it's not as easy as ball pythons, but I feel like if you can find, like, I'm fine tuning Shinglebacks where it comes a time where it could be, if you do the right things, it's not that hard.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Trying to think. So we didn't really touch on blotchies. We didn't really touch on westerns. Let's talk westerns a little bit. You've had success with them, right?
Yes.
You've had success with everything you have. Like, you haven't been stumped by any of these skink species.
Probably the westerns, but again, this goes back to trying to understand and perfect it. And I think I'm getting there. And I think there was a time where I kept them too warm and the babies are coming out weak, but I had because I understand how important cool temperature and hot temperatures are. I was able to have, I've had litters before. I've had, a bunch of litters, but like, I've only had like maybe a little less than a handful of perfect litters of westerns. And I had one this year, a perfect litter of giant, fatty, of westerns, six babies in a litter. And it was off one lock.
Which, one lock really is enough a lot of times. Like I said, this is the last season I do 3. It'll be 2 moving forward. If I miss, I miss. But, like I said, I've had a lot of different species where one lock is all it takes. So I believe in that, but I also believe my numbers sucked the last couple of years.
Well, this is going to be your year.
Yeah, and again, man, like I said, I had 4 males do a lot of my heavy lifting last year and then didn't produce shit. Like, I had 1 male lock 9 females, 2 other males lock 8 females, 1 lock like 6 females, but I wasn't getting that many babies. Like, one of 9 were going in some cases. So, like, I learned that way that's not going to work. But, again, taking 1 male to maybe 3 females twice, very reasonable. That should get the job done. That's the way I used to do it. I just had a lack of males and a lot of females, and I selfishly tried to get a little bit in every one and see what happens.
Yeah, I feel like that's something I've learned over the years is limiting. I've learned is limiting, putting your male to too many females. I haven't had great luck doing that anymore. It's like trying to limit within that 2 female range, like 1 male to like 2 females. I'm trying to get to a point where, and I can, it's different from like some of the northerns where people have a larger collection, but I try to make it where I'm doing just like a 1-on-1, and that's it. I just think in my opinion, I feel like it could dilute, a lot when you start to, cover too much. I mean, I'm not 100% sure on that, but I felt I've had better success on just trying to go, just 1-on-1 and giving a male a nice break,
I'm willing to fail for 2 years and accept defeat and then move back to what works. And like I said, I've done that with a lot of things. And like I said, even though I've been doing skinks as long as I have, I feel like I'm always trying to, again, find ways to do it right, dial it in a little better. But so how about this? I'm going to want to do another one of these because, Junior had a ton of stuff he wanted to talk about that I didn't even touch on.
All right.
I wanted to kind of leave for him. I was hoping he was going to show up last minute. He just didn't show up.
It's all right.
But I'm going to get up pretty early tomorrow because we got this snowstorm that's going to hit, and either I'm going to get snowed in or I'm going to get to the shop early enough to get snowed in there.
All right.
So
Well,
optimistic, but you know, I hate it that I made it so abrupt, but honestly, you know, I appreciate you coming on. This is definitely one of those conversations that could have went 5 hours.
good.
We'll do this again. You know, we'll create a new atmosphere. You know, I got Joe Ball wanting to come out pretty soon, so
I like Joe Ball a lot.
my thought was when I bring Joe on, I might have like a few people pop in for cameos. So
All right.
I'll put you on the cameo list.
All right. That'll be awesome. Thanks. Yeah,
Well,
I enjoyed this. This is a great conversation. And like, it's so good to, you know, talk to like-minded people. And this conversation was definitely very, you know, easygoing. Like it wasn't, you know, forced. It was a good time.
No, they always are. And honestly, the fact that we haven't had a lot of conversations before made this a whole lot easier because there was a ton of shit to talk about. But
Yeah.
like I said, we'll communicate a little more until, you know, I start ignoring you again. You know, I'll send you pictures until there's no more pictures to send.
All right. Well, stay
honestly,
safe too.
So, oh yeah. Plug your Instagram, plug everything so people know where to find you.
Yeah, so it's on Instagram. It's Johnny, so JOHNNY _ Rachs RHACS. That's mainly when I'm on, and then you know my Facebook's just, you know, Johnny Felicetti. You know, you see it right on there. And that's really pretty much what I use.
All right, cool, man. Well, I'm gonna start using Instagram soon, so I can start looking at your stuff. But do send me pictures too, because I haven't opened up Instagram in like years.
Yeah, and if you ever make your way out here, you're more than welcome. You know, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate, you know, MJ letting me come on, and I appreciate you having me on too.
Yeah, no, like I said, I've been meaning to have you on for a long time, and you know, MJ brought up your name about 3 weeks ago. So it was going to happen at that point. Sometimes I just need the reminder. But
That's all right.
Great conversation. Honestly, loved everything about it. Yeah, sounding off. Peace out, bud.
See you, man.